Keynes had a sharp mind for business, pure Latin American instinct. When it came to investments, the man saw things others didn't. He came to the Middle East for one reason: money. Wherever he spotted an opportunity, he pounced, no hesitation. Chen Cheng saw it differently. He was about balanced growth. Keynes has a lot of tricks up his sleeve. I didn't expect him to set his sights on this place too, Chen Cheng said with a dry smile. If he were calling the shots, he'd just throw money at the problem and go head to head. But Angola was the Middle East's transport hub. Too many commercial systems couldn't handle that kind of direct competition. The real problem was Keynes himself. The man thought differently from everyone else. A pure profit seeker. Money was all that mattered, nothing else. Chen Cheng hated that about him, but what could he do? Unlike other contractors, he couldn't just expand freely across the Middle East. We need to keep an eye on Keynes, Ziegler said. Sure, the Middle East economy is booming, but that doesn't mean a major war won't break out. This place is a prize, everyone wants a piece. Ziegler agreed. Without enough power, you got swallowed whole. They'd learned that the hard way. They weren't about to let it happen again. They planned to use outside influence to neutralize any threat early and minimize damage. That's why they treated Keynes's arrival with such caution, almost paranoia. They knew Keynes was brilliant. Every move he made was calculated down to the last detail. The guy was hard to deal with. We should warn him too, Chen Cheng sighed. Make sure he doesn't back himself into a corner. If Keynes were a normal person, that would be one thing, but he was a madman, and that worried Chen Cheng and the others. Don't worry about that. Keynes is smart. He's not that stupid. He won't do something like that, Ziegler said. Ziegler trusted his instincts. Keynes wasn't impulsive. He knew that for a fact, so he wasn't worried. That's still a problem. Chen Cheng frowned. Keynes might not be a madman, but he's too smart. That's its own kind of headache. I think he might come after us. He was a businessman. He understood risk and reward. He didn't want his own ventures to take a hit. He wouldn't go that far, Ziegler laughed. Relax. We've got a solid foothold in the Middle East. He won't affect us much. And if he tries anything, I won't let him get away with it. We're not afraid of his threats. I'm just worried about the fallout if he does, Chen Cheng said with a sigh. That was his biggest fear. I trust he'll think it through. We're a mutually beneficial group. He won't wreck that lightly, Ziegler said calmly. Nothing in the world was permanent, not even money. Keynes was ambitious, so he'd pick the right path. But this needed careful planning. They couldn't rush. Ziegler believed Keynes had his own plans. He just had to wait patiently. Good. Chen Cheng felt a little relieved after hearing that. So what's Keynes doing in the Middle East this time? He asked. Says he's here to negotiate a contract, Ziegler said after a moment. A contract? Then it must be something big. Otherwise he wouldn't show up personally or bring that kind of money. Looks like his target isn't you or me. Chen Cheng analyzed. It made sense. The Middle East's development was undeniable, but Keynes was smart. He didn't take reckless risks. He needed to secure his own base before expanding. That meant no crazy gambles or massive cash outflows, so he had to look for partnerships. That was a kind of wisdom, too. Is his contract really that important? Chen Cheng asked curiously. Yes. We need to study it carefully. Ziegler nodded. He wasn't stupid. If Keynes's contract was significant, they needed to be cautious, too. That was the only way to protect themselves. I agree. We need to discuss this in detail. Can't let Keynes slip through any cracks, Chen Cheng said. They talked it over and decided to pause the discussion for now. They still didn't know the real reason for Keynes's visit. They needed to investigate further. Once they discovered his true intentions, they'd act to stop him. Our Middle East business is basically stable now. If we seize this opportunity, we could make a killing then, once we take down Keynes. The whole region, including Ancola's market, will be ours, Chen Cheng said with a grin. He was excited. The future looked bright for the Middle East. They just had to keep pushing. But our investment this time is huge. If we don't get the money in fast enough, we might take a serious hit, Ziegler worried. The situation wasn't ideal. They needed a backup plan, otherwise, they'd be in trouble. Don't worry. We've got plenty of resources, Chen Cheng said with a smile. That's true, Ziegler nodded. He had confidence in their investments. The Middle East market was incredibly rich, and no doubt about it. There was massive potential here, and those resources were too valuable to waste. The Middle East belonged to Mohammed. A land loaded with resources he could export, extract, and turn into profit across the globe. But protecting what was his took serious money. During his last days before departure, Chen Cheng and Ziegler returned to the industrial park. The gold mines and ore deposits were barely 10% tapped. Massive reserves still sat underground. The real gem was the diamond mine. They used the most advanced extraction methods on the planet, so waste was practically non-existent. Dongmi's taking the bulk of the supply. That kid is like a black hole, all take, no give. Ziegler let out a rueful smile. Just like all of Chen Cheng's people, same stubborn personality. Let me put it this way, Dongmi brings in huge profits. His channels are why we've got such strong sales in China and Europe. Latin America, though, not much traction. Chen Cheng wasn't exaggerating. Latin America was a different animal. Gaining a foothold there was no small feat. The jewelry business was pure margin, but that didn't make it easy. From training designers to launching product lines, they'd already captured 40% of the market. That was a solid position, and it gave Chen Cheng a steady sense of reassurance. Dongmi's talented, I'll give him that, but I'm more impressed by your luck, Ziegler said. My luck came from you, so it's only right I repay you. What do you need this time? Chen Cheng looked at Ziegler, waiting. No payment necessary. It was the least I could do. Besides, your problems are solved now. You don't have to worry, and the environment here is nice. Ziegler shook his head. He knew he could never fully repay Chen Cheng, so accepting nothing was the better path. He didn't realize those words carved themselves deep into Chen Cheng's heart, hardening his resolve. Don't be polite. You helped me this much. Payment is deserved. And since the place is so good, I'll bring my family for a vacation sometime. You'll stay by my side then. Chen Cheng meant it. He genuinely wanted his family to come here. The environment was quiet, perfect for a peaceful retirement. Ziegler knew he couldn't refuse. Fine, I'll follow your arrangements. I'll enjoy life, too. He understood Chen Cheng wanted to keep him close, so he accepted. In the end, Chen Cheng gifted Ziegler 10% of the mine's dividends, deducted from his own share. It was what Ziegler deserved. That night, word arrived. Keynes had rushed out of the Middle East, headed straight back to Latin America. The whole region's unstable right now. A lot of contractors have already pulled out. I haven't gotten confirmation yet, Ziegler said with a wry smile. He promised to tell Chen Cheng the moment anything happened. Later that evening, the news hit solid. A number of Latin American businesses had turned on Chen Cheng. They'd recalled all their traders from the Middle East. The move reeked of sanctions. Chen, if I go back, I'll have to contact you on the down low. They'll likely target your Middle Eastern banks. Ziegler had no choice. The mine wasn't legally under Chen Cheng's name, so it might slip by, but Development Bank and Tiancheng Bank were too big to hide. Thanks for the warning. I'll squeeze every dollar I can, but they won't touch me. Chen Cheng was certain he had more than a handful of friends, and one he'd never called on. 5 minutes later, he dialed Rochester. The man's voice drawled through the line. Chen, I've been sitting by the phone, starting to get a little impatient here. Rochester clearly knew already. He understood exactly why Chen Cheng was calling. So, what do you make of Latin America's attitude toward me? Any smart ideas? Chen Cheng's partnership with Rochester was close, and this time, only Rochester could help. My family can lean on them. That's easy, but remember, you promised me exclusive access to your phone supply chain. Rochester only cared about Chen Cheng's phone distribution. Nothing else interested him. Most of Chen Cheng's industries weren't high-tech, so they barely had a footprint in Latin America. More important, phone frameworks and core components were locked down by the Chinese market. Even if Rochester could manufacture, he couldn't source enough parts to compete anyway. Rochester continued, I'm all about the bottom line. Give me a price low enough that I can still turn a profit, and I won't waste time. On R&D, that's not my style. You ship the phones to me. I'll strip them down, swap the shells, add my own data encryption. They become my brand. No leaks that would cause way too much noise. Fair enough. We'll do it your way, but I need you to dig into something. Chen Cheng told him about Keynes. I knew Keynes was in the Middle East. What's he doing meddling in business? Rochester sounded genuinely puzzled. He promised to dig deeper and told Chen Cheng to relax. He'd have answers by evening. At the latest, I'm counting on you. Contact me if anything moves in Latin America. After hanging up with Rochester, Chen Cheng began moving all funds out of Tiancheng Bank. He could feel it. A move was coming. The first person to knock on his door would be Mohammed, so he needed to visit Mohammed's estate and talk. With outside pressure mounting, Mohammed could back him up. Chen, a rare guest. I take it you just got back from Ankara? Mohammed said. Chen Cheng chuckled. The old man had eyes everywhere. He didn't bother pretending otherwise. We're businessmen. After all, our business is developing the Middle East, but certain obstacles are giving me a headache. Chen Cheng offered a dry laugh. Got any good ideas? That depends on your sincerity. I judge the situation, not the man. Wang Ping'an held shares in the Development Bank now. That changed everything. Even if Mohammed regretted it, he was too late. The signed agreement was locked in. Unless he paid Wang to buy back the shares, that bank stock was gone. Mr. Mohammed, we're at a critical moment. If the Latin American merchants unite to sanction me, your bank takes the first hit. Wang smiled faintly. He wasn't the one stressing. He wanted Mohammed to feel the pressure and volunteer his help. There was a stark difference between the two approaches. If Wang asked for help, he'd have to pay a price, but if Mohammed offered it first, Wang would walk away clean, with nothing to lose. Mohammed's composure cracked. This was the nightmare he'd been dreading. If things went the way Wang described, the entire Middle East situation could unravel. All their work would be wasted. The market economy would become nothing more than a decoration. Mr. Wang, I think we need to sit down and talk this through, Mohammed said, his tone noticeably softer. He didn't dare oppose Wang right now. He couldn't even risk angering him. Let me be clear, Mohammed, this isn't a game. Think it through. Standing with me might make you a target for those Latin American merchants. Wang's face stayed expressionless. He was handing the decision to Mohammed. What else can I do? I have no other path. Mohammed's voice came out rough, almost a shout. All he wanted was for Wang to offer a plan, something concrete. That was the only way he could stay on his feet. The international landscape was exactly as Wang described. The bigger you got, the more people wanted to tear you down. Fine. Then show me what the Middle East can offer. My entire ecosystem needs balanced development right now. Wang told him he would step in and fix things if there were any other option. But there wasn't. I'll give you a green light. Your business system and mine will support each other. Wherever you need to expand, you'll have my authorization. Mohammed made it clear that as long as no force was used, Wang could operate however he wanted. It was exactly what Wang needed. He pulled out his phone and called Feng Yang. He told him to drop the mining project and move straight into deploying the second plan. Start developing the enterprises immediately. Mohammed froze. He hadn't expected Wang to move this fast. The man had already decided before they'd finished talking. I need a development in the city of Ankola. You'll place your local Middle Eastern industries inside it. Also, in every major freight hub city, my stores need to open. Wang added that he'd attach local welfare aid to the store openings, so Mohammed didn't have to worry about that. It was probably the best news Mohammed had heard all day. He nodded firmly. The rest fell into place. All key positions would be filled by local Middle Eastern business talent. Feng Yang and Ziegler had already been working on that. 43 stores in total. Plus the development company, nearly 50 establishments. When Mohammed saw the list, even he was surprised. Wang's reach went far beyond what he'd imagined, and all of it had been arranged in the span of a single phone call. Humanitarian aid and commercial aid, both in the name of the Development Bank and the Middle East Development Bank. You understand what I mean? Wang looked at Mohammed with a smile. Of course I do. You're giving me half the credit, thank you for that. Mohammed let out a dry laugh. Sure, Wang was boosting his reputation, but nobody knew if it could turn the situation around. Wang alone couldn't match the Latin American merchants. The real leverage was that Wang held half the Middle East's lifeline in his hands. That fact alone left Mohammed with no choice. After leaving the villa, Wang met with Feng Yang. Wang, it's been a while. Our situation doesn't look good. Yeah. I thought sending you to the Middle East would be a break, but the business war here is fiercer than back home. Wang smiled bitterly. He hadn't expected the core team he'd placed here by chance would actually pay off. Feng Yang was a company veteran. His ability didn't differ much from Wang Feng's, and the man could push through hard work. Those 2 points were enough for Wang to trust him completely with everything in the Middle East. Honestly, You still haven't married, you might want to think about it. You're on the rise now, Wang said. If the Middle East goes well, you could consider going back to China. What for? I'd just be flying around every few days anyway. Isn't that exactly your life right now? Ping'an couldn't help but laugh. Wang hardly ever had a normal day, always on a plane. Even when he returned to China, he'd stay 2 or 3 days before heading somewhere else. Economic globalization gave businessmen the thrill they craved, but it cost them too. How many company owners back home were flying everywhere like this? Can't be helped, the group's expanding too fast, too many jealous eyes out there. Wang pointed out that in just 2 years, he'd outpaced what many companies achieved in decades. What he'd done was beyond any pioneering firm in China. Right now we have to be extra careful. I think with Mohammed's cooperation here in the Middle East, we'll be fine, but those merchants might target our foreign trade channels. Ping'an's worry wasn't baseless. A lot of their Middle East foreign trade had gone through the trade delegation. Now that the delegation was gone, that route was dead. The so-called Middle East Industrial Park had become a decoration. It was originally built for Wang to do business with the Latin Americans, and that business no longer existed. Let's see how the channels look. We'll probably hear something in a couple of days. Wang knew he couldn't rush. He had too much to handle, and none of it was simple. The channel issues wouldn't affect the domestic market, only overseas sales, but Wang had his own ways to break through this time. Not a single old friend had reached out to him. That meant they were all lying LOW, so it was time for him to make a move and shake them awake. Chen Cheng had warned the businesses he'd acquired and the partners he'd worked with for years that if he'd tipped them off, they were off the hook. But the rest, he was going to use his own commercial leverage to start squeezing their local industries. Since none of them had bothered to tell him about something this big, they were going to pay a price. The moment Chen Cheng cut off all the original food and electronics distribution channels, those business owners started sweating. Smith was the first to come knocking, demanding Chen Cheng explain the supply chain disruption. I have no idea what you're talking about. Where'd you get that? Nothing like that would ever happen in my group, Chen Cheng said lightly, studying their faces to see how his so-called old friends would handle this. You don't know about something this big. We've been partners for years. Chen Cheng, you can't just play games like this. Smith was furious. Morris and a few others chimed in, piling on the complaints. Clearly, Chen Cheng's move was hurting them badly. You really don't know what's going on? Chen Cheng asked, faking confusion as he scanned their faces. What does that have to do with us? We're your partners. Chen Cheng. Don't kick us while we're down, Smith said, his expression souring. He knew exactly what Chen Cheng was implying. Then let me spell it out for you. Latin America is about to sanction me. All those channels I shut down, I was forced. Their goal is to make sure you local businessmen have nowhere to turn. Chen Cheng smiled easily, then asked if there was anything else they didn't understand. That's impossible. The internal Latin American meeting only targeted your Middle East market expansion and your foreign imports, Morris muttered, confused that he didn't realize every word had landed right in Chen Cheng's ear. The next second, Chen Cheng let out a sharp laugh. If this hadn't blown up, were you planning to hide it from me until I went bankrupt? His voice dropped cold. eyes blazing. Of course not. We were just figuring out the right time to warn you. Look, we hadn't even finalized anything yet, Smith said, forcing a smile. He needed to smooth things over now because Chen Cheng had the power to get their products blacklisted in the mainland market. Figuring out timing, the whole world knows, but I was supposed to be left in the dark. How about this? However you treat me, I'll treat you the same way. Chen Cheng announced that starting now, their industries would face sanctions too. After all, they'd all built their success on his back. He was going to release a public statement in the mainland, terminating all cooperative agreements and supply channels from now on. No goods would go to Latin America, and no Latin American merchants would be allowed into his territory. Consequences be damned. Chen Cheng, think this through. This isn't the time for rash decisions. If you actually sanction our industries, there's no coming back from that. Smith knew Chen Cheng was playing a losing game for both sides. They didn't want a scorched earth outcome either. Let me make this clear. I don't care how Latin America sanctions me. What bothers me is that you backstabbers are piling on when I'm down that I can't live with. Chen Cheng's laugh was unrestrained. He asked Smith if he had any good solutions. If not, this meeting was over. His group had already gone global. Adding one more partner or losing a few wouldn't change a thing. With that, Chen Cheng walked straight out of his own office. He had no intention of wasting more breath on these people right now. Besides the Latin American channels, plenty of European distributors were coming to him on their own. They all wanted to partner with him. With one competitor out of the way, why would they miss this chance? Besides, everything was about growth now. Only an idiot would say no. Today's first meeting is with a European dairy company, Zhu Kaiyang said, handing over the schedule. He gestured for Chen Cheng to take a look before deciding. I'm not turning anyone away as long as the product is solid. Chen Cheng had no objections. He knew how to deal with these people, and they usually came with a fair offer. The visitor was a young man with blonde hair. He greeted Chen Cheng warmly. Mr. Chen, let me introduce myself. I'm Swag, chairman of the largest dairy company in Europe. He handed over his business card. Mr. Swag, I've heard of your dairy brand. If I'm not mistaken, you haven't started importing into the mainland yet, have you? Chen Cheng knew the brand well. It had a strong reputation and quality products, one of the few dedicated dairy groups out there. No, we haven't started importing. That's exactly why I came as soon as I caught wind of the situation. Swag admitted without hesitation. He told Chen Cheng he'd come with nothing but sincerity. If Chen Cheng could set up a dairy distribution channel into the mainland, Swag would have no objections and would even provide a substantial investment. I'm planning to establish a subsidiary in the mainland specifically for imported dairy distribution. You would manage the mainland operations, and I'm offering you a 50% stake. Swag explained that no other partner had ever gotten such a sweet deal. This was his first time trying something like this. I can agree the terms are generous enough, but I have one question. Why are you pushing into the mainland market right now? Chen Cheng wanted to understand Swag's thinking. He already had plenty of distribution channels, and all he'd really need to do was get the products onto supermarket shelves and into food wholesalers. With so many cities and distributors available, Swag didn't really need him. Because I want to get closer to you. If I just offered you a commission, you wouldn't bother looking at our products. Swag smiled easily. He said the first million was a gift. He'd handle all the costs and paperwork for setting up the new company. That was it. All he needed was Chen Cheng's approval, and the money was ready. I have no objections. We can sign. Chen Cheng wasn't eager to get into middleman work, but this was a great deal. Turning down free money would be stupid. And that one deal wasn't the only. 1.4 or 5 more came by that afternoon. All of them wanted partnerships. They offered the same terms as Swag, pure relationship building. What they really wanted wasn't market access. It was Chen Cheng's cooperation in other areas. $1 million to make a friend, and we can shift Latin America's focus to Europe. By the time Chen Cheng's industries hit the market, we'll be ready to cash in. Swag smiled and glanced at the boss beside him. They had planned this long before. If the first pitch got Wang Ping'an's approval, the rest would be in the clear. Honestly, after everything I've dealt with Wang, the guy's solid. Swag shook his head. Feng Yang's just jealous. The other bosses nodded. If those Latin American merchants hadn't stirred up trouble, they never would have gotten this lucky connecting with Wang Ping'an. Everyone knew his European business was strictly luxury goods and jewelry. He didn't touch anything else. That made this opportunity everything. We all know how it is. Let's pick a place to sit. Swag waved the others off. He needed to talk to Wang Ping'an alone. Swag had brought in a handful of distributors Wang Ping'an had never met, regional agents from other territories. Their channels were exactly what Wang Ping'an needed, at the very least. The losses from the Latin American route had to be balanced out somewhere else. If not, the damage wouldn't be minor. It would be catastrophic. There was no way he could just walk away. This place works. Swag pointed toward the coffee shop ahead. Mr. Wang, the owner's a friend of mine. Wang Ping'an looked it over. The design was understated, nothing flashy, but every detail showed the barista's careful hand. From the moment you stepped inside, the rich scent of coffee wrapped around you, crisp and clean. That atmosphere was hard to describe. You had to feel it to understand. Yeah, Wang Ping'an said quietly. It's nice. He never held back a compliment, at least not in front of outsiders. Should we go in? Might as well. I've got something to discuss with you too. Swag led him to a corner booth. A waiter set a menu on the table immediately. What can I get for you? Swag asked. Wang Ping'an considered it for a second. Cappuccino, and a bottle of whiskey. Of course. 1 minute. Swag nodded to him, then signaled the waiter. The waiter was fast. Within minutes, everything arrived. Wang Ping'an set a stack of bills on the tray. Thank you, sir. The waiter's smile widened. He pocketed the cash and left. Swag watched, a flicker of surprise crossing his face. He had money, no question, but a stack like that still caught his eye. Using cash that freely, for coffee of all things, only reinforced how deep Wang Ping'an's pockets really were. Not that it mattered to Swag. The only thing he cared about was the man's character. Everything else came second. He wasn't a villain. Mr. Wang, I came to talk business. Swag slid into the seat across from him. No more small talk. Wang Ping'an took a slow sip of whiskey. Business. You big bosses are swimming in money. Can't imagine what you'd be short on. Swag's expression shifted, then he let out a short laugh. We're never short on deals, but the competition right now, brutal, without enough capital and real influence, you can't survive in this market. I see. Wang Ping'an nodded as if he were thinking it over. So what kind of partnership are you picturing? Swag breathed a little easier. He'd been worried Wang Ping'an would shut him down. That fear was gone now. The man was willing to talk. Swag felt confident he could lock this down. After a beat, he decided to stop circling. A chance like this didn't come twice. I know you've got a project in development, Mr. Wang, that I want to bring you in as a partner. Wang Ping'an met his eyes. Partner in what? Swag smiled. A new real estate development. The investment is huge. We need a major corporation behind us. That means deep pockets, and I'm guessing you're not exactly worried about funds. He said it almost like a question, a test. Wang Ping'an paused. He knew what it was. He didn't want to play games. I'm not swimming in cash, but I'm not looking to partner with you either. My company doesn't need your money. I need a partner with real power. The corner of Swag's mouth twitched up. He'd gotten his answer. Wang Ping'an wasn't hurting for money. The man was sharp. A rejection didn't bother Swag now. This was exactly the kind of savvy partner he wanted. Together, his company could carve out a massive chunk of the market. Think it over, Mr. Wang. I know our cooperation would be a success, and you're not strapped for cash. All you need is a company that can supply the right resources. Swag pressed. Wang Ping'an looked him straight in the eye. Swag, I know what you're thinking. I'd rather not go into business with you. You're not worth the time I'd have to sink in. Nobody wins that way. Mr. Wang, please don't take it like that. That's not what I meant. You're overthinking this. If we team up, we both profit. I guarantee it. Swag's tone was earnest, nothing sly about it. You must have a lot on your plate, Swag. Wang Ping'an rose from his seat. Yes, this is something I'll need your help with. Once I've got my affairs in order, I'll come visit you again. I hope we can have a very pleasant partnership. Swag stood too. Wang Ping'an nodded, giving him the signal to leave. Before he left, Swag handed Wang Ping'an his phone. My private number. I hope you'll keep it. If you ever run into trouble, don't hesitate to call. Wang Ping'an reached out, a small smile playing on his lips. Sure. They exchanged numbers, and Swag turned and walked out. A faint smile spread across Wang Ping'an's face. Looked like tonight was going to bring some good news. Swag had come prepared. Mr. Chen already has everything. You really think he'd blink at some ordinary trinket? He smiled as he pulled out the scroll painting. This piece was far from cheap. The truth was, he had swooped in and snatched it, a multi-million-dollar prize pried straight out of someone else's hands. Go ahead and pack up your luxury goods. To him, they're worthless. Swag wasn't trying to cut anyone down. He just knew these items were pointless, ordinary. If we can get in good with Chen Cheng, every door swings wide open. The connections they had lost in Europe needed rebuilding. Lucky for them, Latin America had screwed up, or they never would have gotten this shot. All right. Enough talk. I'll head to his company first thing tomorrow and deliver it myself. He hadn't gone tonight because he wanted the delivery to make a bigger splash. Swag wanted eyes on him. He needed this moment to put his name on the map. This was his first time in mainland China. His first real deal with a local. A chance like this didn't come often, and if he blew it, he would never forgive himself. No problem. It's all small stuff. By tomorrow, everyone will know what's happening. All night, Swag rehearsed the move. He couldn't afford to seem pushy. Chen Cheng wasn't just anyone. Piss him off, and there would be hell to pay. The bottom line was simple: Chen Cheng was no ordinary man. The next morning, Swag arrived at Chen Cheng's headquarters with the painting. He rolled in with a full convoy, cars clearing the path like some kind of VIP inspection, but his actual gesture was fairly standard. "What's Swag's deal? Acting like he's never had the spotlight before," Nai Xiaolong muttered, annoyed. Guys like this disgusted him, clawing for attention by any means necessary. Let him be. Getting attention isn't that easy. He'd better have the chops to back it up. Chen Cheng's smile was faint. He wasn't going to waste energy on trivial nonsense. At least, not right now. As expected, Swag hit the entrance and unrolled the painting right there on the spot. It had a protective layer, so there was no risk of dirt. "This is my first time working with Mr. Chen, so I took the liberty of selecting this scroll. It's nothing special, just a small token of goodwill." He handed the painting over in full view of everyone. Chen Cheng already knew which painting it was. He had seen it before, but Swag wasn't about to get his easy moment. The whole place was filled with workers. Nobody even glanced his way, and Swag was a foreigner. Almost no one understood a word he was saying. He went on and on, only to realize the atmosphere had gone completely flat. Everyone stared at him and no one spoke. His face heated. "I'm very grateful to Mr. Swag for this painting." Chen Cheng shook his hand earnestly. "He's made a remarkable contribution to our country by turning it over." Then he called out for Xiao Qiong to find some people and submit the piece to the authorities. Chen Cheng had zero interest in admiring artwork. To him, it was just a thing. Swag had no clue that the multi-million-dollar piece he had just handed over was being donated without a shred of fanfare. Nothing. Chen Cheng simply dismissed him. The whole situation felt wrong. Everyone should learn from Mr. Swag's spirit. His willingness to hand this over makes him a true friend. At Chen Cheng's signal, every employee broke into thunderous applause. "I bet Swag's kicking himself right now. He never saw this coming." Nai Xiaolong laughed so hard he couldn't stop. The guy had come to bribe Chen Cheng, but Chen Cheng had completely flipped the script. "Isn't it better not to owe him a favor? He probably thought we wouldn't accept his gift, so he rushed over and now he'll rush back. He's got to be furious." Nai Xiaolong could barely get the words out through his laughter. "You two, stop teasing him. He's a real tycoon. This money means nothing to him. But you're right. He's definitely frustrated. He tried to buy me off with cash and make me back out of the contract. He didn't expect we wouldn't bite. That's why he's sulking." Chen Cheng shook his head with a dry smile. He hadn't wanted it to go this far, but here they were. The three of them chatted on, completely ignoring Swag standing nearby, as if he didn't exist. "You think if Swag knew what we just did, he'd actually spit blood? Who knows? I bet he wants to kill both of us right now. You think he'll still cooperate with us after this?" "No idea. Maybe he's already written us off." Chen Cheng shrugged. He honestly didn't know. He hadn't expected things to shake out this way either. Anyway, let's head out. He'll figure it out any second now. Good call. Damn, should have thought of that earlier. Let's move. Laughing and joking, the three of them headed back toward the company building. They didn't notice how dark Swag's face had turned. He had come to give a gift, and instead his gesture had been thrown right back in his face. It stung. That man named Chen. I'll see what he's really made of. Swag picked up his pace and followed after them. He had to know how Chen Cheng really saw him. He was a tycoon, one of the richest, at that. Mr. Chen, do you have any time soon? As Chen Cheng and his men walked away, Swag appeared behind them. A sly smile spread across his face. He was sure that if he flashed just a little of his wealth, he could charm a nobody like Chen Cheng. Sorry. My schedule is booked solid for the month. I'm afraid not. Chen Cheng turned around with an apologetic look. He was far too busy to work with this guy. Even if he had an opening, Swag probably wouldn't qualify. Oh, what a pity. Swag's face dropped. But since Mr. Chen is so busy today, why not give me this one chance? He pulled a bank card from his pocket and held it out in front of Chen Cheng. What's this supposed to mean? Chen Cheng frowned. Was this guy out of his mind? He already said he didn't have time, so why did he agree? Was the guy really that clueless? Consider this a gesture of good faith. I brought all this because I want to work with you, Mr. Wang. I hope you won't refuse my sincerity. If you do, I'll take it as a sign you don't respect me. Swag watched Wang Ping'an with confidence, certain that if Wang turned him down, he'd be genuinely disappointed. Since you're being so sincere, Mr. Swag, I have no reason to say no. Wang Ping'an knew that pushing back further would only make him seem disrespectful. That wouldn't help their future relationship. Excellent, Mr. Wang. I'm looking forward to a great partnership. Of course, same here. Wang Ping'an smiled and extended his hand. Swag took it, his grip firm. They held on a beat too long, each man testing the other. Mr. Wang, what kind of project are we going to work on? Can you give me a hint? We'll talk privately later. This isn't the place for business. Fine, whatever you say, Mr. Wang. After seeing Feng Yang and Swag off, Wang Ping'an returned to his office to restructure operations. He had more than just minor tasks. He needed to call in senior executives and hammer out specific partnership details. Have we confirmed all our electronic distribution channels? Wang Ping'an glanced at Feng Yang. Yes, Mr. Wang, every channel is set. Good. I'll have someone drop the transport prices by 10%. That should multiply our original value at least tenfold. Then we'll find other avenues for capital. Wang Ping'an wasn't worried. Everything was running on schedule. Each day was just about collecting revenue and funneling resources into R&D, but the situation in Latin America was deteriorating. If those businessmen tried to impose sanctions on him, he'd teach them a lesson. Jones and his people still haven't given us a straight answer. Should we just cut them off? Feng looked puzzled. In his eyes, Jones was nothing but a petty schemer. Why waste words on someone like that? Not everyone was cut out to be a real teammate. These so-called partners were just a front. We can't burn all bridges. Sanctions are necessary. But there are no permanent enemies in this world. Wang Ping'an hoped Feng would shift his mindset. That kind of thinking was dangerous. If they provoked the other side, the company would suffer. Feng's eyes lit up, as if Wang's words had sparked a breakthrough. What should we do next, Mr. Wang? Wait, Jones will give us a definite answer soon. Got it. I'll handle it. With that, Feng turned and left. Once he was gone, Wang Ping'an stood and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window. He stared out at the view, lost in thought. He couldn't figure out why Jones had changed so drastically this time. Just as Feng stepped outside, a car pulled up beside him. The driver stepped out from behind the wheel. Mr. Wang, Jones's team just sent word. They want to apologize and work with us again. Good. We'll head over now. Wang Ping'an nodded and slid into the car. This was his moment to strike back, no time to waste. We're on our way. Feng didn't waste words. He drove straight to Jones's company. When Wang Ping'an walked into Jones's office, the man's face went pale, then flushed. He was clearly torn. Mr. Wang, why did you come in person? If you needed anything, you could have just told us to handle it. Seeing Wang Ping'an in his company made Jones nervous. He didn't dare offend him. If Wang got angry, his own company would go bankrupt. Just checking in. How are things going? Jones let out a small sigh of relief, so Wang was just here to look around. Nothing to worry about. Everything's fine. Jones forced a smile, his expression dripping with flattery. Good, that puts my mind at ease. I was afraid you were up to your old tricks again. Wang Ping'an smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Jones broke into a cold sweat. He didn't dare say a word, just kept nodding with a nervous grin. All right, you can go. I just came to see how things are. Since there are no issues, we'll stick to the old arrangement. Wang Ping'an didn't pressure Jones this time, same as before. He also didn't need to worry about the man trying to deceive him. There was only one chance. If Jones didn't value it, Wang wouldn't leave him any room to survive. Jones exhaled in deep relief. Mr. Wang, if there's nothing else, I'll get back to work. Sure. Go ahead. As Jones walked away, a cold smile spread across Wang Ping'an's face. He couldn't do anything to them right now, but he was certain their business would collapse the moment he decided to act. Here's the contract Jones sent over. It has all the company details. Take a look. Feng handed a file to Wang Ping'an. Wang took it, flipped through it, and found the terms satisfactory. You did well, but don't trust him completely. In Wang Ping'an's eyes, Latin American businessmen were all the same except for Ziegler. They were full of tricks. If he let them drag him down, he might never recover, so he had to be extra careful, at least not to rub anyone the wrong way. Here's the latest report. Our market share for baseband chips is surging. The percentage had jumped from 60 to 80.20 points wasn't just a number. To Wang Ping'an, it meant the difference between reaching a few hundred people and tens of thousands. A base that big proved the market was growing fast, and the conditions were already miles better than before. Is anyone copying our distribution model? If not, we need to hire market agents. He wasn't planning a massive rollout. He'd do whatever made the most business sense. The current setup could work for a few more years before it went stale. More importantly, a lot of people were eyeing this supply chain right now. Electronics was a rising sector, and it could evolve in a dozen different directions. Wang Ping'an had no interest in chasing side ventures anymore. He didn't have the time. We can supply the signal band, everything except the core can go out, but anything that requires technical encryption stays locked down. He wasn't about to let his R&D get ripped off. That would be catastrophic, unacceptable. I know. I'll go over it thoroughly with Dongni, but there's something you need to watch out for. Ping'an told him that European businessmen were lining up to partner with him, and those deals might not be as clean as they looked. If Wang reconnected with Latin America later on, Europe's share would swallow up all his other overseas resources. Then he'd have no leverage. Those people weren't easy to handle. They understood the power of bundling. Going forward, Wang Ping'an could accept OEM orders. Anyone who needed phone parts could buy wholesale from him, but every other product would only be available through his own channels. The Europeans knew the phone industry inside and out. That was exactly why Wang kept pushing his own product line. His phone business had carved a blank space in Europe, just waiting for him to push deeper into it. Obviously, if someone steals my product, I'll go all out. They'll get exactly what they're asking for, but for now, we can't tip our hand. As long as we keep that mystery alive, they'll take the bait. Wang Ping'an had no doubt about that. In the past few days, his company had pulled in steady revenue, more than enough to set up their own distribution channel in Europe. That channel was a single, clean line. Once it opened, he believed it would set the trend. Maybe even create something entirely new. But right now, we just need to keep ramping up production. It'll climb steadily for a while, then hold steady. No dips, no spikes. That's my promise to the company. I trust you understand. He didn't want anyone knowing about this. It was a trade secret. One leak could deal a massive blow. I know how to handle these products. Don't worry. They won't get stolen easily. Once they enter Europe, they sell through us alone. That was the design from day one. Even if someone wanted to rip it off, it wouldn't be possible. Ping'an was confident. He believed that no matter how powerful those European firms were, once their products hit the Ping'an supply chain, they couldn't slip out of his grip. It was a monopoly. They were used to it. And so was Ping'an, but deep down, Wang Ping'an felt uneasy. He didn't know how much the Europeans would actually buy, or whether they'd try to disrupt the supply chain in the short term. Ping'an had just broken into Europe. They'd cracked the market open, but to other companies, it was still a massive prize. And they weren't the only ones at the table. He didn't want everything he'd built to collapse, but he was even more worried about someone stealing his product. Those people weren't stupid. They might not understand every detail of how Europe worked, but Wang was sure they knew more than he did. And they were far more powerful. They could easily find people to knock off Ping'an's products. Don't worry, that shouldn't happen. Our stuff isn't ordinary. Nobody can just get their hands on it, and the Europeans won't take that risk. They know how crazy things get in business over there. Ping'an laughed. He understood Wang Ping'an's concern. After all, he was something of a wild card among those European businessmen. Otherwise, Wang never would have handed the company over to him to run. This company was dangerous. One wrong move and it could get swallowed whole. Good. That's what I need to hear, but I still want us to keep expanding. That way, if they do attack, we'll be ready. Wang Ping'an had total faith in Ping'an's products. They weren't ordinary, their quality was a cut above, even the highest international standards couldn't beat them. Relax. Ping'an's brand has already taken the lead in Europe. As long as we keep pushing, our product will turn into a giant. Feng Yang answered with zero hesitation. Alright. Let's make it happen. Wang Ping'an clapped him on the shoulder. His eyes burned with determination. He believed he could pull off a miracle. Oh, by the way, didn't you have someone look up the contact info on those European tycoons? That way, we can open up the market faster and dodge any unnecessary trouble. Yeah. I tracked down a few. I'll have them sent to your office in a couple of days. Familiarize yourself with the list first. Tomorrow, you can reach out to them directly. Chen Cheng hadn't had the chance before, but the whole Latin America mess finally shifted things his way. Contact every last one of them. Invite them to China. I'll host. He smiled as he gave Zhu Kaiyang the order. This couldn't fail. If these heavy hitters showed up, he could redirect attention, and that meant Swag would keep working with him. Mr. Chen, you reaching out first. I have to say, I'm surprised. Swag had always found Chen Cheng unpredictable. He never knew quite how to read the man, but this proactive move, it felt good. Before, too many eyes were on me because of Latin America. I couldn't help that, but now they should be convinced we're not just chasing profit. Chen Cheng offered a faint smile and slid a schedule across the table. What's this? Swag glanced at it, his stomach knotted. He recognized a lot of the names, top-tier European tycoons, the kind who could shake any market they walked into. They're all flying into China tomorrow. I'm handling the hosting. You'll coordinate them. Swag sucked in a breath. He hadn't expected that kind of generosity. Don't look so shocked. You know these men, you share common ground. If deals come out of it, even better. That was the plan. Chen Cheng alone didn't carry enough weight to convince everyone. He needed a real European businessman at his side. Swag fit the bill perfectly. Whether his influence was permanent or not, right now he was Chen Cheng's most trusted European partner. Don't worry, Mr. Chen, you and me, I'll handle everything just right. More than 30 European businessmen were coming. That already outnumbered the Latin American contacts Chen Cheng had originally lined up. He made sure to give Swag face too. Not a single old friend got invited. The whole European crew's coming, and Chen Cheng's hosting. Should we crash it? A few businessmen clustered around Smith. If Chen Cheng sealed deals with the Latin American bosses, there would be nothing left for them. Go or don't go? Simple question. We're businessmen. No need to be that proud. They decided to take the shot. The opportunity was too rare. Missing it would mean serious regret. But when they tracked down the venue and tried to walk in, the security guard stopped them cold. How dare you? Do you know who we are? Smith demanded, furious. He never expected to be blocked. This is a private event. Invitation only. The guard held his ground. No invitation, no entry. Impossible. I know your boss, Chen Cheng. I'm his partner. If you don't let me in, I'm losing hundreds of thousands a minute. Smith raised his voice. He had to get inside. Please leave. Don't make this hard for us. Mr. Chen said anyone without an invitation, or who forgot theirs, doesn't respect him. Whatever happens next isn't his problem. The guard turned away. Done. They weren't getting in. Smith had no choice. He pulled out his phone and dialed Chen Cheng. Boss, your phone's ringing. Xiaoqiang handed it over. Chen Cheng saw the caller ID and didn't flinch. He let it buzz. Smith was probably downstairs with the others, trying to crash. Not happening. Mr. Chen, there are a few Latin American businessmen downstairs. Why not invite them in? Swag asked, puzzled. He'd spotted them on his way inside. They're here to cause trouble. If they mess with those European heavyweights, can you handle the fallout? That one sentence snapped Swag to attention. He nodded. No way could they afford that risk. A single wrong move could cost more than a few billion. Understood. Those guys aren't getting in no matter what. Swag took the lead, introducing Chen Cheng to a few friends. He made sure to drop a remark about clueless people in the city, pointing straight at Smith and his crew. Word spread fast through the European circle. Even if they got upstairs, no one would talk to them. True to form, the entire party was all drinks and chattered. No business talk. Chen Cheng didn't push for signatures. He wasn't in a hurry. Everyone, let's move to the Nokia lounge. I've prepared some things there I think you'll find interesting. Chen Cheng had several massive screens set up, the control system transferred from his phone. He was working on a tablet project, but those trade secrets weren't for sharing. Sounds good. A few of the tycoons lit up at the mention of new gadgets. They couldn't wait to check them out. Let's go see. I hope this doesn't disappoint. Swag clinked his glass and motioned for the group to follow. He was already planning how to push the energy in that room to another level and how to make money fast. After you, everyone. Chen Cheng gestured, leading them toward the Nokia lounge. In the eyes of these tycoons, Chen Cheng had already surpassed them. They didn't dare treat him the way they used to. He had real power now, and they knew he still had tricks up his sleeve, high-tech products they couldn't even comprehend. As far as they were concerned, Chen Cheng was the top figure in the business world. All they had to do was look up to him. Inside the Nokia lounge, the praise started immediately. This room is incredible. They're so comfortable. Two of the tycoons pulled out notebooks to jot down details. Everyone, I don't think you know this yet, but we also have an even more private space here. Let me take you for a look. Chen Cheng smiled. Before he finished speaking, several tycoons were already on their feet, eager to leave. To them, the showroom wasn't a room, it was a vault. Every corner whispered money, and they were already itching to tear it open. Chen Cheng lifted a hand, stopping them cold. Hold on, everyone, take a seat first. Let me explain. He pointed at a compact computer on the table. What you're about to see is the newest kind of electronic product, something none of you have ever touched before. A touchscreen device. The wealthy investors froze mid-step. Brand new touchscreen model. Chen Cheng went on. You control the screen any way you want. Jones had rigged it in projection mode, but every touch point ran straight to the motherboard. The capacitive screen let them control the phone flawlessly, while the projected display made everything easy to see. In this day and age, getting your hands on a phone like this is no small thing, so look close. Then decide if this deal suits you. Chen Cheng smiled, relaxed, and certain that he had zero doubts about what was coming. This product could make or break anyone. Not just him. The whole damn industry. Truth was, These concepts still lived locked inside other people's imaginations. Chen Cheng had just yanked them into the real world a little sooner. That was exactly why he could promote and sell so freely. The businessmen weren't stupid. They caught his drift immediately. One of them leaned forward, curiosity coating his voice. This is a touchscreen computer? The leap was staggering. Nobody had ever turned a touchscreen into something like this. How could they not be stunned? It's a computer, yes, Chen Cheng said. The system is the same one running on our phones, but we upgraded the internal core and the framework. He explained that even desktop computers came in tiers, so their touchscreen computer followed the same logic. Touchscreens are still pretty useless right now, though, another investor cut in. Except for Nokia's multi-touch support, none of the other platforms have this featured. So, what's your price? He already knew it wouldn't be cheap. In our currency, around $6,000. Chen Cheng gave them the minimum $6,000. For this machine, it was a steal, and every product Nokia developed was years ahead of its time. Back in 2006, touchscreens were already going mainstream. The software he'd created was his own invention, zero commercial bloatware, a closed, secure service, absolutely no privacy leaks. 6,000? God.is, it really worth 6,000? The room sucked in a collective breath, faces frozen in shock. That kind of money wasn't chump change. Not for anyone. Chen Cheng's smile didn't waver. He'd expected this. He'd come prepared. 6,000 is actually reasonable. In our hands, this device can generate you 10 times the profit of anything out there right now. He kept pushing. The investors nodded slowly. For this era, the price made sense, but they still hesitated. They couldn't picture how a single phone could churn out that kind of return. Chen Cheng read their doubt perfectly. When you don't yet know the true value of a thing, who's willing to bet big? Forget the price for a second. One of them said, slicing through the chatter, most important thing is to understand what this computer can actually do. Easy. Chen Cheng scooped up the device and handed it over. I've got a few documents right here. Take a look. The files were packed with technical specs. You're really something, getting your hands on all this, the investor remarked, visibly impressed. I've always worked hard. Chen Cheng kept his voice modest. The investor shot him a glance, then opened the document. Data flooded the screen, more than he'd ever seen, and some of it way past what he thought was possible. Okay. He exhaled. I've looked it over. This computer is incredibly powerful, and it has a standalone intelligent program, something we've never seen before. How did you pull it off? He wasn't the only one blown away. Every single person in that room stared at the smart software, completely floored. In this age, they simply couldn't wrap their heads around how a machine like that had been built. Don't be too surprised, Chen Cheng said, his voice slow and clear. Our goal is to make money. All you need is this intelligent program and our network. You won't need any other technical knowledge. That should keep things simple for you. Not bad. The investor nodded. Not bad at all. I'll take this computer. 6,000. I'll wire you the money right now. The price clicked into place for him. He believed the intelligent program was top tier, and $6,000 for a machine like this, zero downside. But we're not accepting retail sales yet. Chen Cheng said. The computer isn't in its final stage. We're only taking pre-orders. The pre-order price wouldn't bounce around with the market, so there was nothing to worry about. And being the first in the world to lock in stock, that alone guaranteed everyone a profit. As for how many units each of them took, Chen Cheng didn't have a reference. That wasn't his problem. I'll start with 10,000. The businessmen were ruthless. Stockpile now, then jack the price at launch. Foolproof. When Nokia's phones first dropped, sales skyrocketed into the millions. This wouldn't just hit the European market, other countries would be scrambling to buy right here. Chen Cheng tapped the contract on the table. No deposits. No down payments. If you're in, sign and transfer the funds. His smile was easy. He'd seen this coming from a mile away. Deals closed when he was in the room. It would have been a miracle if these guys hadn't begged to buy today, and clearly, that miracle wasn't happening. How many signed? Jones asked under his breath, unable to catch the numbers the investors had thrown out. Chen Cheng didn't even look at him. See for yourself. Most CEOs came and went fast, a day or two, then straight back to running their own companies. The Latin American delegation, though, didn't budge. They lingered, desperation climbing by the hour. The Europeans are out. Wang Chongqing has to move now, Boss Wang muttered, frustration edging his voice. If Wang Chongqing stayed quiet much longer, Boss Wang felt ready to snap. And then Wang Chongqing did move. He started quietly updating his inner circle on the European partnership, dropping casual hints that anyone interested should reach out. The second Boss Wang heard about it, regret hit him like a wave. This is all Keynes's fault. He spat the words, shoving every ounce of blame onto the man. If that snake hadn't stirred up all this chaos, we wouldn't be crawling back like beggars. The whole Latin American mess is on his head. Without Keynes, they'd still be on decent terms with Wang Chongqing now. They couldn't find a single opening to slip back in. Once bitten, twice shy, that's the saying, and we're living it, one of the other bosses grumbled, his tone heavy with gloom. They all knew Wang Chongqing had emotionally shut them out, but what excuse could they possibly offer to earn their way back? I heard Swag gave Wang Chongqing a painting, and he turned right around and donated it. Should we try the same thing? They were wealthy men. A partnership with Wang Chongqing meant limitless profits, and a painting cost nothing compared to that. Do it. See what's available overseas, buy a painting, and gift it to Wang Chongqing. Boss Wang didn't hesitate. A painting was pocket change. It wouldn't even cause a dent in their balance sheets. Dig deeper, find out what Wang Chongqing actually likes. We'll get it for him. That afternoon, Boss Wang strolled into Wang Chongqing's office wearing a broad grin. He laid out his idea, careful to avoid any direct talk of a gift. Instead, he simply asked if Wang Chongqing had any interest in famous calligraphy and paintings. Absolutely. I'm drawn to pieces from the earliest dynasties. They have real character. A faint smile played on Wang Chongqing's lips. He knew exactly what Boss Wang was fishing for. Some idiot had blown Swag's little incident way out of proportion, making everyone believe he was obsessed with rare art. In truth, he couldn't care less. Even if you handed me one, I'd just donate it. Good for public image, sure, but honestly, I'd rather have cash. He kept that thought to himself, simply shaking his head with a small, wry smile. Then I know just what to do, Boss Wang said, his voice Brightening finally, he had a clear target. He immediately fired off a text to a contact overseas. Find the oldest painting you can get your hands on, but old paintings cost serious money, tens of millions, even hundreds of millions. His friend didn't sugarcoat it, throwing out numbers that climbed into the 9-figure range. That price tag created a real dilemma. Go too cheap, and the gift wouldn't outshine swags. Go too expensive, and they'd take a loss. We'll do 100 million. Everyone goes in on it. Boss Wang and the others pooled their resources. Individually, none of them could swing that amount. Overseas, they set up meetings with several collectors and actually tracked down a genuine piece. That one that I don't know squat about art, but it looks damn good. Boss Wang nodded once. Decisive. He despised wasting words in moments like this. Speed was everything. Miss the window and they'd lose it all. 100 million was obscene money, but if it made Wang Changsheng happy, it was worth every last cent. Ship it back with extreme care. I paid a fortune for this. 0 issues in transit. 3 days later, the painting arrived in Boss Wang's hands. He couldn't wait to present it. He copied Swag's approach, putting on a grand spectacle. Word of a famous painting's arrival spread fast, drawing thousands of people to the front of the company in trance. Get the museum on the phone. I'm donating another painting, valued at over 100 million. Wang Changsheng didn't hesitate. He ordered Li Changyu to handle it immediately. No point letting a gift like that gather dust as expected. Li Changyu moved fast. The museum officials responded even faster than Boss Wang had hoped. Wang Changsheng, this is for you. It might not top any price charts, but it's miles ahead of what Swag gave you. Boss Wang unfurled the scroll with dramatic flair. The brushwork was pristine, the colors even more vibrant than the last piece. So what's the value on this one? Wang Changsheng glanced at the museum official, a smile teasing his lips. At least 500 million. You practically stole it for 100 million. The official grinned wide and asked if Wang Changsheng was absolutely sure he wanted to donate it. Absolutely. Take it, and don't forget to notarize the donation for me. Wang Changsheng had zero interest in anonymous charity, not when he was giving away $500 million. Watching all this, Boss Wang stood bewildered. Those people were just walking off with the painting. Wang, what's this about? He asked, completely lost. Nothing much. I asked a friend to store the painting. We'll display it properly sometime. Wang Changsheng offered a light smile and gestured for Boss Wang to join him inside for tea. Boss Wang could feel it, a definite thaw in Wang Changsheng's attitude. Over the past weeks, Wang Changsheng had given him nothing but cold silence, and it had been driving him insane. Latin America is already back in line. No point dragging this out. Find out how many distributors still need their supply restored. If they don't step up, I'm handing those contracts straight to Europe. Wang Changsheng spoke bluntly, as if he held every single card. Everyone wants back in, even the Middle East. If the word comes from you, Brother Wang, nobody's going to refuse. Boss Wang layered on the flattery, finally learning the art of saying the right thing. Alright. Let's have lunch. I want to discuss something big with you. For Wang Changsheng, this was far from finished. Keynes was just the beginning. That bastard had stabbed him in the back. Now it was time to return the favor. Hard. You're still holding a grudge against Keynes? Boss Wang could tell Wang Changsheng wasn't the forgiving type. Getting on his radar was a painful place to land. Keynes has to pay, you know exactly what I mean. Wang Changsheng's tone cut like a blade. If it weren't for Keynes, he wouldn't have lost so much money. Barring any surprises, Wang Ping'an had 100 ways to handle Keynes, but this time, he wanted Latin America to bleed. If he played it right, the mainland would become the Middle East's largest supply chain, slicing straight into Latin America's global market share. Either way, it was worth it. He looked at Ziegler and the other men, laying out his next steps. You all know the Middle East better than I do. The mainland's economy couldn't afford to crack. Latin America was already in chaos, and Europe had jumped in. There'd be no breathing room. Now was the perfect time to strike back. Our progress in Angola is on schedule. Pull together a few top electronics experts. We're going head-to-head with Keynes overseas. Ziegler didn't need the whole picture. All he had to understand was that Wang Ping'an was building a Middle East trade zone. Everything else was noise. Just as Wang Ping'an predicted, the Latin American businessmen, barely back on their feet, made a beeline for Angola. Wang Ping'an had already sunk money into 2 massive commercial properties there. The men were even ready to abandon the transportation hubs they'd poured serious cash into. One of the bosses spoke up, voice rough with conviction. I don't give a damn what anyone else thinks. You guys are my best friends. We're doing this with Wang Ping'an. When Keynes had first set out, he'd had dozens of bosses at his side. Now only a handful remained. Europe's pressure had cracked them. Restrictions didn't matter anymore. If Wang Ping'an couldn't turn a profit, their own roads would dead-end anyway. There was no chance in hell they'd sell him out now. This time, they came to cooperate, but Keynes had zero interest in cooperation. He needed to prove to Latin America that only he could lead them to victory. Without that chance, his business empire would crumble. And before that happened, he'd deal with those old foxes personally. Keynes leaned back, scanning each boss. Our mission is simple. Build a direct trade route to Europe. You'll monopolize our European business. The partnership between Europe and the mainland was a win-win, but if these bosses refused, his whole operation was dust. A middle-aged boss spoke first. Fine. We'll follow your lead. Building that route would be brutal, but not impossible. Europe and the mainland were far apart. Still, it was a beginning. Another boss cut in, tapping a document. Here's the agreement. Hit the targets, full compensation, miss them, and the payout shrinks. This route was riskier than Wang Ping'an's, so the safety net was thinner. That was the deal. Keynes thought for a moment. Yeah, okay, but if this still doesn't fly, we all pay a price. They could stomach that kind of loss. A third boss nodded. Don't worry, when we pull it off, the payout will be worth it. They had nothing left to lose, so why be afraid? Then we lock it in. Send these documents to the company now. Keynes handed over several stacks of paper, signaling them to start preparations. The middle-aged boss took the papers and stood. We'll wait for your good news, Mr. Keynes. He turned to leave. The paperwork was thorough, down to every cent Latin America had invested on the mainland. They'd spent a long time digging that up. If this worked, every hour would be worth it. Only now did they realize Wang Ping'an's power far exceeded anything they'd imagined. Wait, Keynes called. The middle-aged boss paused, brow furrowed. What is it, Mr. Keynes? This file is our ace in the hole. If it comes down to it, I need you to stay with me. This isn't just business, it's international politics. If things go sideways, we watch each other's backs. Keynes's tone was iron. This was going to get ugly. Without Keynes backing them, they'd never finish the job on time, but with him on their side, that changed everything. Fine that I'm in, one said. Me too, I'll stay and see this through with you, another added. The men jumped at Keynes's offer. They were desperate for that cash injection. That's great. Don't worry, once this job is done, the money will hit your accounts fast. Keynes smiled, then turned and signaled his men time for the guests to leave. Then we'll take off. You'll be hearing good news from us. The businessmen rose, heading out and giving Keynes a grateful wave as they left. Once they were gone, Keynes spoke. I agree with your plan. No matter what it costs, we have to see it through. Relax. As long as we have enough strength, even if the plan fails, our foundation stays intact. Chen Cheng gave a slight smile. He controlled the entire mainland market now. He could move funds freely for a strategic retreat. Plus, he had investments in the Middle East. They had nothing to fear. This time, Chen Cheng wasn't just going after Keynes. He was going to destroy him, ruin his reputation, and leave him so broken he'd never recover. Keynes was far too arrogant. If Chen Cheng didn't teach him a lesson, bigger problems would come later. Chen Cheng's plan was airtight. They'd prepared for everything, even mapped out how to counter Keynes's likely moves. Their ultimate goal: throw Latin America into chaos. Chaos would cause a massive devaluation of Latin American goods. That meant higher profits. They could skim huge commissions from those goods and become the biggest shareholders in the Middle East. And then they'd have absolute control. The thought of the endless profits waiting for them made Chen Cheng's eyes gleam with excitement. Chen, your plan is brilliant, but I'm not sure it's 100% foolproof. I'm worried they might catch on. If they do, we'll face serious resistance. Ziegler spoke up beside him. He didn't fully agree with Chen Cheng's approach. Their enemy wasn't just Keynes. The families and organizations pulling his strings were just as dangerous. All of them were ruthless schemers with enormous ambitions. So what if they figure it out? Let them try something. If they dare make a move, I'll show them what real despair looks like. Chen Cheng's face hardened. This plan had to succeed. Keynes was trying to get Latin American governments to lend to the major European conglomerates. That was suicide. Sure, Latin America's economy was a mess, but it had serious political resources. And their investments in Europe were massive. If they united, Europe's economy could take off, boosting our own interests back home. We couldn't let that happen. But Chen, I don't think they'll agree. They'll drag their feet. If they get us into negotiations, they'll lead us around by the nose. Our position will get even more dangerous. Ziegler pressed on. They were in a tight spot. Their opponents were every major merchant in Latin America. If those merchants agreed, Latin American goods would tank. If they refused, Latin American assets would crash and they'd lose everything. I've already thought about that, but to pull this off, we need some outside help, Chen Cheng said. Even though Latin American goods had dropped in value, their assets were still huge. They needed a way to destabilize those assets, make their cash flow seize up. Then those businessmen would have no choice but to come to Tiancheng Bank for loans. Once that happened, the bank's funding chain would break, their losses would shrink drastically, and they could reclaim their own loans. After that, money wouldn't be an issue anymore. You want our consumers to pressure the capitalists? Ziegler caught on exactly. It's not the cleverest trick, but those capitalists will love it in their eyes. They're sitting on piles of cash. Chen Cheng chuckled. That news will cause a stir. If they refuse, we'll find another way to handle it. Either way, they won't dare reject this plan. Chen Cheng's laugh turned cold. Capitalists are always hungry for money. That appetite plays right into our hands. Cash will keep pouring into our pockets. The funding chain will never break, and our assets will only grow. Since you're confident, I won't argue. When do we start? Tonight. We need to wrap this up fast and grab those $50 billion in Latin American assets. All right. This time, there was no way Keynes was escaping. The next day, when Chen Cheng and his team pulled up to Tiancheng Bank's headquarters, his car had barely come to a stop when a line of luxury sports cars rolled in. He studied them closely. All of them were Keynes's personal rides. The first door swung open and a pudgy man stepped out, all swagger. My friends, you finally made it. I thought you weren't coming. Chen Cheng strode over to the fat man, grinning as he greeted him. How could we not come, Mr. Keynes? We respect you too much, and when you invite us for dinner, there's no way we'd say no. Rod clapped Chen Cheng on the shoulder with a grin. Chen Cheng, you're looking better every time I see you. I think so too, Chen Cheng said, laughing. What about you, Keynes? Don't you agree? Keynes scoffed. Don't make me laugh, handsome. Please. I see exactly what you are. Wow, your eyes really are sharp, Chen Cheng said, feigning surprise. Hard to fool. I can practically see them popping out of your skull, and no wonder. I heard you've been having nightmares. Now I get what kind. Right on cue. Keynes's face darkened. He glared at Chen Cheng like he wanted to rip him apart, but Chen Cheng wasn't a pushover. He met that glare with a flat, unbothered look. If Keynes wanted a fight, he'd get one and lose. Play it smart, Chen Cheng said, his voice cool. Or I'll be happy to step in and you won't like the result. Keynes nearly choked on his own rage. He was a major capitalist in the Middle East. Nobody talked to him like this, but he only fumed inside. He didn't dare lay a hand on Chen Cheng. You think I don't see your game? Keynes hissed. You want to bleed me for resources, then move on to the other capitalists. Not happening. Get the capital however you can, and fast. Or we will come for you. Fine, Chen Cheng said, contempt dripping from each word. You want to take on me and the entire capital world? Go ahead. If you can handle that, I've got no problem. If you can't, don't stand there flexing in my face. Keynes ground his teeth. I know you've got money, Chen Cheng, but let's see whose it really is. Your only way out is through me. Cooperate, or regret it. I bet you're dying for our showdown. Anytime you've got the guts, bring it. Fine. Just wait. I'll make you regret this for the rest of your life. Keynes stormed off, too furious to say another word. Chen Cheng watched him go, unimpressed. The real move was already in play. He planned to build a skyscraper in Angola, not for profit, but to create jobs for the locals. Get them on his side. That was the goal, local buy-in. With the community behind him, he'd stop being so vulnerable that no matter how fast Keynes moved, He couldn't touch him. That was Chen Cheng's trump card. His strongest asset. Angola might be poor, but it had people. And Chen Cheng believed that in a few years, it would become a vibrant, thriving city. Back in the office, he turned to Ziegler, a file in hand. We've already broken ground. If you need anything, just say the word. Ziegler nodded with a smile. He'd handled projects like this before and fully supported the approach. It boosted their reputation and brought in solid revenue. Spending the money was no problem. Over the next few years, we'll build factories in the center of Angola, Chen Cheng continued. Higher wages, better benefits for workers. We won't stop expanding. If we find the right projects or products, we keep going. We've already started carving out our place internationally. Don't worry, Ziegler assured him. We'll follow your plan. Within a few years, those factories will only get bigger. They were fully committed, claiming that international foothold was critical, and they had to make it happen. Chen Cheng nodded. He'd been in constant contact with Ziegler, hoping he'd help set up the factories. This was his last overseas company launch. He needed a stable, efficient development mechanism. With these factories, he'd have more time to grow his business. In the years ahead, he had a lot to accomplish: establish a global presence, create a stable environment to develop. Only then could he truly focus on his career without distraction. Let's go, Ziegler said, gesturing for Chen Cheng to lead. Chen Cheng returned the gesture and walked out of the Angola office. As soon as he stepped into the project site trailer, several staff members looked up. Sir, who are you? What are you doing here? One asked, eyeing him warily. The man seemed official, so they held back. Chen Cheng offered a polite smile. My name is Chen Cheng. I'm here for an inspection. Can I help you? Chen Cheng. You're Chen Cheng? The staff member stared, surprised. Is there a problem? Chen Cheng asked, puzzled. It wasn't often someone questioned him like that. Mr. Chen, you're a busy man. We never expected you to show up in person. It's an honor you came to inspect, an older staff member cut in. Should we adjust our schedule? That's fine. I just want to take a look around Angola first. If the right project comes along, we move forward. And if I like what I see, I wouldn't rule out building a factory here. Chen Cheng kept his tone casual, his smile easy. We have plenty of projects worth your time, the staff member said, her voice polished and professional. If you're interested, we'd be happy to give you a tour. Good. I appreciate that. Chen Cheng nodded and followed her out. He hadn't expected his identity to open this many doors. Money, sure. He'd always known money mattered, but the instant recognition, people stepping aside, eager to please, that was something else entirely. A short drive later, he walked into a high-end hotel and rode a private elevator to the top floor. A few attendants flanked him, ready to show off the property. The location is excellent, Chen Cheng said as they paused at the panoramic windows. But I'm guessing the price tag matches the view. It's not cheap, one of the attendants replied with a practiced smile. But it is very much in the premium tier. She already knew Chen Cheng had the means. Spend a little time around him and his habits were easy to read. Keep him happy, and good things happened. Your service is impressive, Chen Cheng said to a younger woman nearby. He meant it. The staff here were sharp, dedicated. They didn't just serve clients, they anticipated them. "Thank you, Mr. Chen," the woman said, her voice dripping with flattery. "All our staff are handpicked. We make sure every guest feels comfortable, relaxed, and completely at ease." Good. Chen Cheng gave a small nod and smiled. The hotel sprawled wide, manicured lawns stretching out for guests who wanted to enjoy the scenery. Every inch of it had been designed to cradle power and seal deals. When he stepped into the grand lobby, the luxury hit him all at once: gleaming marble, soft lighting, a dedicated lounge area that practically begged you to sink into a leather chair with a glass of whiskey and negotiate a merger. He spotted a few familiar faces. Prominent figures, most of them. Presidents of international corporations, wealthy foreign businessmen. Chen Cheng recognized a handful from recent headlines. "Gentlemen." He walked over, hand extended. "We meet again." As he approached, one of them rose and shook his hand firmly. "Chairman Chen." Chen Cheng raised an eyebrow, genuinely puzzled. You know who I am?" The man smiled. "Robert, president of the Robert Group." Behind him stood Ross, the group's vice chairman, observing with quiet interest. "Chairman Chen, that's precisely why we're here. We heard your company is looking to develop a few new projects." "That's right. They're ours." Chen Cheng's smile returned, sharper now. "I brought my team here hoping to find some prime plots." Robert's face lit up. He had parcels he'd earmarked for international firms, but he didn't yet know the full reach of jewelry or just how deep Chen Cheng's pockets went. "We've got excellent locations available. Would you be interested in taking a look, Chairman Chen?" Chen Cheng paused, as if weighing the question, then he nodded slowly. "These projects mean a lot to my company. Tell you what, we'll pay top dollar for the rights." He'd decided to hand the deal to the Robert Group. It was cleaner that way. "Ha!" Robert chuckled, pleased. "I was just floating the idea. In that case, let's lock this down as fast as possible." "Good. I'll follow up the moment I'm back." Chen Cheng pulled out a set of blueprints he'd sketched the night before. They weren't overly detailed, just the essentials, but he'd memorized every spec. He believed in the potential, and now he planned to sell the plans to Robert and his team. "These projects are outstanding. We can secure them for you in no time. If you trust us, Chairman Chen, I'll assign a team immediately. All contracts signed within 3 days." Robert beamed as he studied the drawings. "That would be perfect, thank you." "Of course. If anything comes up, just call." "Sounds good." Chen Cheng smiled and said his goodbyes as the group filtered away. Once they were out of earshot, Chen Cheng turned to the middle-aged man beside him. "Can you really lock down those projects in 3 days?" The man was Feng Yang, sharp, shrewd, and fully aware that Chen Cheng wasn't about to let those deals slip through his fingers. They'd already prepared for one final push. If their measurements passed review, they'd be eligible to compete directly with the Robert Group for those exact contracts. Their company was big enough that landing a high-profile project would boost their international standing. It would also send a clear message to Robert Group. They weren't playing second fiddle anymore. "We've been a long-time client of theirs," Feng Yang said with a grin. They know our track record. If what we deliver meets their standards, they won't block us, and if our bid is fair, they can't complain. Your bid's way too low. Chen Cheng shook his head. We're talking about the Robert Group. At their level, a bid like that won't even register. Can't be helped, the Robert Group is massive, and our products don't stand out the way they need to. We get zero traction with them. We lowball too hard, and they'll push back. It's hard to say where it'll land. Feng Yang shrugged, the gesture light but his eyes sharp. Chen Cheng looked out the window, the city sprawling beneath him like a chessboard. The pieces were moving. He just had to make sure he stayed several moves ahead. Fine. I'll think it over. Give me 3 days, then have them bring the contract and we'll talk seriously. Wang Ping'an weighed the offer for a long moment before agreeing. The Corinne Consortium's terms were solid. Landing both projects would give their company a serious boost. Perfect. Feng Yang's face lit up. If he could lock in these 2 deals, their reputation would skyrocket. Another major step forward. He wasn't about to let anything slip through his fingers now. The partnership negotiations went smoothly. After a few more words with Robert and the others, Wang Ping'an excused himself to get some rest while his people stayed behind to keep networking. In his room, he closed the door and dialed Ziegler. Ping'an. Ziegler's voice held a note of surprise. Didn't expect to hear from you so soon. Things are looking good in the Middle East. Robert's been making connections for us. With the Corinne Consortium's support, we're in a solid position. Wang Ping'an let the satisfaction seep into his tone. No way. That's incredible. The Corinne Consortium is a powerhouse in Latin America, huge, top tier. Their products have serious market demand. If we get their backing, I'm confident we can finish the project fast. Ziegler's voice brightened with excitement. That's what I thought, but I'm calling because we have a deal on the table, and I'm not happy with the pricing yet. What do you think? Wang Ping'an kept it light. He trusted Ziegler's instincts, but he also knew the old saying, a snake trying to swallow an elephant. Better to get his input. On pricing, just bump it up to our standard rate. Their tech is top-notch. I don't see any risk here. Ziegler chuckled. Just get their contract to our factory. Don't sweat the details. I'll handle it from there. All right, I'll follow your lead. Don't worry, I won't let you down. This project will be a success. Wang Ping'an gave his word with a grin. After hanging up, he pocketed his phone. He could already picture the surprise and admiration on Ziegler's face when he saw that contract. Brother Ping'an. Wang Qiong stood at the door. Wang Ping'an nodded with a smile and started toward the stairs. Feng Yang fell into step beside him, voice low. Brother Ping'an, who were you talking to just now? He paused, then grinned. Oh, I get it, Ziegler, right? That's right, smart kid. Wang Ping'an patted his shoulder. You're too kind, Brother Ping'an. Feng Yang rubbed the back of his head, a little embarrassed. You're my guy, who else would I praise? He gave his shoulder another pat as they walked toward the office. Feng Yang followed, watching Wang Ping'an's back, admiration shining in his eyes. Brother Ping'an was something else. Not just handsome, but generous. Everything he had, he'd earned through sheer effort. Ever since they'd started working together, every step had gone right, because Brother Ping'an was the most important person in his life, and he would never let him down. Ping'an silently vowed to carve out his own success right. Alongside him that he wouldn't be a burden. He would make Wang Ping'an stronger, better, more outstanding. That was the only way to be worthy of standing by his side. That he followed, lost in thought. Brother Ping'an's journey hadn't been easy. He'd started as an ordinary worker, no connections, no background, and climbed step by step to where he was now, every inch of success earned through sweat and hard work. Ping'an would stay right behind him, making sure Brother Ping'an lived more comfortably and happily. Wang Ping'an was thinking along the same lines. They shared the same goal, a better life. Together they pushed each other forward, believing that only strength could protect them both. Back in his office, Wang Ping'an sat and looked around. Since the city's expansion, this office had become the largest in the building and the most luxuriously decorated. Opulent was the only word for it. All of it thanks to the wealth Ziegler had brought him. Just thinking about Robert's assets made his heart race. A fortune beyond imagination. This time, he was going to make serious money. He sat for a moment, mulling things over, then pulled out his phone and dialed. "Hello, is this Robert's assistant?" Wang Ping'an spoke in fluent English. "Mr. Wang, hello, how can I help you?" A smooth, professional voice answered. "I've found a partner who wants to cooperate. They're willing to offer 50 million Malar currency for Mr. Roberts' shares. How should we proceed?" "One moment, please. I'll inform him." The assistant's reply was prompt. They'd been preparing this deal for a long time, contacting plenty of potential buyers, but Robert was a proud man. His company, though sizable, wasn't in the same league as theirs. Rage blazed through Keynes the moment the news hit. Ping'an had been pulling strings behind his back. The man had a death wish. "I'm going to make him pay." And the knife this time. Robert's International Trade Group. Keynes' hands trembled with fury. Of all the bastards, it had to be that one. He added Robert's entire group to his blacklist, marked for destruction. "Keynes, I suggest you pause all operations." Elsa's voice stayed measured. "We need to investigate before making any moves right now. The priority is finding out who's really behind this." She didn't have every detail, but the phone call had made one thing clear. This mess was tied to Keynes. If he took the fall, things would get ugly fast. Keynes knew he couldn't act recklessly. If Robert's people dug up the truth, he'd be ruined. "I get it." He let out a heavy sigh. He hated admitting it, but the most important thing right now was figuring out who had set him up. "Keynes, what do we do now?" Elsa asked. His face darkened. "This doesn't end here. We get to the bottom of it. I know what to do. I'm calling my lawyer." Elsa nodded, picked up the phone on the desk, and dialed. She murmured a few words and hung up. "He's on his way." An hour later, a man in a black suit knocked and stepped into Keynes' office. Jerry, Elsa's personal attorney and one of Keynes' most trusted men, a top-tier lawyer in the States. "Elsa, I'm here to go over the case with you. Have some coffee first." Keynes cut him off from the sofa. "We'll take it slow." Elsa gestured for Jerry to sit and handed him a cup. Jerry took a sip, then set it down. His expression was serious. "Keynes, I've heard the basics of your situation, but there's something you need to know. What you're doing right now contradicts everything you've built in Latin America. First, You crossed a line. Getting tangled with Robert's international trade group will hurt your expansion there. Second, this file you've been using, it's fake. He tossed the document onto the coffee table. Keynes stared at it, stunned. Fake? That's impossible. He'd scoured every source online. The file had checked out perfectly. No loopholes. This couldn't be right. It is fake, Jerry insisted. The evidence inside looks airtight, but it's all a forgery. If I were you, I'd never make a decision this stupid. Robert's group has resources we can't match. That hit home finally. Keynes believed him, but doubt still gnawed at him. He'd verified the file himself. Was Jerry lying? No, the man had no reason to. Keynes scanned the document again, searching for a flaw. Nothing. It was flawless, packed with content he'd never seen before. Keynes, if you still don't believe me, I can connect you with other lawyers, Elsa said when she saw his silence. They'll handle this properly. Keynes looked up at her, his eyes full of tangled emotion. Fine. I'll do it. There was no undoing this now. His only option was to rally support from these so-called allies. Otherwise, this nightmare would haunt him forever. He straightened and spoke. Good. You know my goal, Robert. The chairman of Robert's International Trade Group. Is my enemy. I want revenge. I need your help. That's only natural, Elsa replied with a smile. If you can take Robert down, we'll be more than happy. No, I can't mix your interests with mine. I need my own win. I won't drag you into this. Elsa frowned. But there's still Feng Yang above us. Is not exactly harmless. That guy's a clown. I'll deal with him soon enough. Forget him. My focus now is destroying that fake file and wiping out Robert's entire family. I want every last one of his assets. Keynes' voice hardened with resolve. This was a decision he'd made long ago. So where do we strike? Elsa asked. Simple. Bring Robert to the company, hand him over to me. I'll make him wish he were dead, and then I'll use him to squeeze every last dollar out of his group. Keynes' eyes glinted with cold fury. He was ready to call in the power his father had left him. Understood. Keynes. I'll get it done. You'll have him soon. With that, Elsa turned and left the office. Feng Yang had no idea about any of this. He couldn't have known how deep the hatred between those two really ran. If Keynes was gunning for the Robert Group, Wang Ping'an had no choice but to play hardball. The documents on his desk held every filthy secret Robert's people had tried to bury. The kind of dirt that could destroy them back home. Out here in the Middle East development zone, most of it was useless. Wang Ping'an didn't need the details to be lethal. He only needed them to cause chaos. Robert had already come begging for a way out. No need to panic, Wang Ping'an said, a faint smile pulling at the corner of his mouth. I've got this. Robert stared at that smug expression and swallowed the curse on his tongue. This wasn't just about money. It was about the Robert Group's reputation, its credibility. If things went wrong, the losses would be catastrophic. But he couldn't afford to push back now. He needed Wang Ping'an for too many things. One wrong word and he'd be cut off completely. Wang Ping'an had already mapped out 100 ways to dismantle the Robert Group. He held every advantage. If Robert stepped even an inch out of line, Wang Ping'an wouldn't hesitate to exile him from the Middle East entirely. Robert forced his pride down. Fine. Mr. Wang will do it your way, but the Robert Group has to survive. If we get acquired, the company is worthless. We'll face massive penalties. It'll destroy us. I need an answer fast. Relax. As long as the Robert Group cooperates, we'll find a solution. Robert let out a slow breath. A knock sounded at the door. The secretary stepped in. Sir, you have a visitor. Wang Ping'an looked up. A visitor? Yes, a gentleman. Wang Ping'an's eyes sharpened. Send him in. I have a few things to discuss with him. The secretary nodded and backed out. Robert's jaw tightened, so Wang Ping'an was already in bed with this man. No wonder he acted so untouchable. A moment later, the door swung open and the man walked in. Robert stood and forced a wide smile. Jock, what brings you to the Middle East? Jock smiled back. I'm here about a business deal with the Robert Group. He pulled a stack of documents from his bag and handed them over. Inside was a detailed breakdown of the Robert Group's hidden assets and its dirtiest secrets. Robert flipped through the pages, his face frozen somewhere between disbelief and dread. Is this all true? He already knew it was. What he couldn't stomach was that Jock had dug it up, especially given how vicious the competition between them had always been. It's all real, Wang Ping'an said, his gaze fixed on Robert. He could see the doubt written across the man's face, the desperate hope that it might be fabricated. So Wang Ping'an stepped forward, took the documents from Robert's hands, and ripped them in two, then in four. He let the pieces flutter into the air like confetti. The truth didn't need paper. Robert's shoulders dropped. Fine. I believe you. He had no choice. He picked up a few of the torn pages and scanned them again, then looked at Jock. You uncovered all this yourself? Jock gave a light laugh. Through certain channels, yes. It's more than enough to expose every dirty asset the Robert Group has in the Middle East. His goal was simple: bring the Robert Group down, or at least cripple it badly enough that they'd never recovered. If it worked, he'd reap massive rewards. If not, he'd scrap the plan and try again. Robert straightened. All right, Jock. I'm calling an emergency board meeting. We'll figure out how to handle this. We still have cash reserves, and I'm putting everything into this. Good. I'll be waiting for the good news. Robert left the Wang estate without another word. As soon as he was gone, the secretary moved closer to Wang Ping'an, worry etched into her face. Boss, this isn't simple. Are you sure you want to get involved? Wang Ping'an's smile returned, slow and cold. Don't worry, the Robert Group stock is the foundation. Their cash reserves aren't as deep as they pretend. If they run out of funds, the whole thing collapses, and if I don't step in now, their stock will keep climbing. I'll buy shares on the open market. When I do, their fate won't be in their hands anymore. The secretary relaxed. Her boss had already thought 5 steps ahead. By the way, how's Robert taking it? Does he believe the threat? Wang Ping'an turned to her. That part was critical. He needed to know if Robert was truly convinced. He believes it, the secretary said. But his expression was pretty grim. Wang Ping'an laughed. Good. If he didn't believe it, I'd be worried. That means our plan is on track. Yes, boss. A new thought crossed his mind. Speaking of which, what's the Robert Group working on these days? The Robert Group had its fingers in pies all over the Middle East and Latin America, but the profits were never what they should be. Right now, their main focus is real estate, hotels, and entertainment, the secretary said. Those sectors aren't booming, their assets are thin, just barely enough to stay afloat. So they won't survive this crisis. The secretary nodded. Exactly, they do have cash reserves, but they don't know how to handle those struggling sectors, so they're lying low. They've already started reaching out to other companies, hoping to expand into different Middle Eastern markets and turn things around. Wang Ping'an's grin sharpened. Perfect. If the Robert Group is willing to unload their real estate and entertainment assets at a discount, they can get cash fast. And that means our cut gets a whole lot bigger. The secretary met his eyes and nodded. I understand, boss. Keynes moved fast. He'd already launched a full-scale smear campaign targeting the Robert Group's dirty history and filed a lawsuit against them in the Middle East. He wasn't sure the suit would stick, but at the very least, it would slow Robert down, smart play, and it was boosting his own influence. Keynes had burrowed deep into Robert's psyche. Every detail, every word Keynes had ever spoken, was burned into Robert's memory. The crisis at the Robert Group had handed Keynes a golden chance to expand. And he wasn't about to waste it. This time, he was dead set on grinding the Robert Group to dust. Robert sat in his chair, his face dark as a thundercloud, eyes locked on Keynes. His voice came out low and sharp. Mr. Keynes, you know exactly what kind of risk you're taking. Keep pushing, and I will hit back. Keynes let out a cold laugh. My company holds a massive market share in the Middle East. As we keep growing, that share only gets bigger. Your assets here, on the other hand, will shrink piece by piece. Those contracts are gone. It's too late to take them back. Our agreement was crystal clear. We cooperate for mutual benefit, nothing more. You don't get to interfere beyond that. Robert's tone was flat. If you refuse to listen, I'll have no choice but to take action against you. Keynes threw his head back and laughed. That's selfish, Mr. Robert. I offered an opinion, and you want to punish me. How? You going to kill me? Of course not. Robert shook his head. But I can make sure you can't operate in the Middle East anymore. That's well within my power. Then you'll have nothing. Is that so? Keynes smirked and tossed a document onto the desk. Read this contract carefully. It says if you can't survive in the Middle East, you forfeit all your rights here, and you'll pay me compensation large enough to rebuild your entire company. I doubt you want to sink that kind of money into this region. Your core business is in Latin America. If things go wrong here, your international reputation tanks, your stock crashes, and you could end up bankrupt. Robert picked up the contract and read it slowly. When he saw the staggering penalty he would owe, his resolve wavered. The threat was simply too big to ignore. Losing everything in the Middle East was something he could not afford. The company had a sterling reputation and strong brand recognition there. If he kept heading down this road, he'd be left with nothing. He had to choose: side with Keynes, or walk away and face ruin. Keynes saw the hesitation and pressed harder. Second thoughts, Mr. Robert? If you've come around, just honor the contract. I'm sure you won't sell yourself short. Robert's glare turned icy. You can't bully me into this, Mr. Keynes. The Robert Group's internal affairs are none of your business. If you insist on meddling, your fate will be 10 times worse than mine. I doubt you want that outcome either. I'm not afraid. Keynes shrugged. We're just business partners, no deeper ties. If one side breaches the agreement, the other can walk away with no consequences. What do you think of that arrangement? Robert stayed silent, weighing the cost. Keynes's terms were harsh, but the alternative was far worse. And the man wasn't bluffing, the evidence he'd laid out was thorough. Robert was trapped between two impossible options. I think I've made myself clear, Keynes said. If you don't want to accept my terms right now, I won't force you. Just keep our partnership in mind moving forward. He turned and started for the door. Wait. Robert's voice stopped him. I'll agree, but I need you to lie low for now. It's the best solution for both of us. Thank you, Mr. Robert, but this is your final deadline. Robert let out a heavy sigh. Fine. I accept. Let's hope we don't have to go through this again. That's more like it. Let's hope our cooperation stays smooth. Keynes walked out, leaving Robert alone in his office, lost in thought. Robert knew that if he hadn't agreed to Keynes's conditions, he would have faced defeat. He couldn't afford to lose any more ground. If he lost this, he'd lose every resource in the Middle East and end up broke. Fine. He exhaled slowly. Since you want to play this game, I'll see it through. If you can throw the Middle East into chaos, good. If not, I'll make you taste what failure really feels like. A cold glint flickered in Robert's eyes. If he weren't so worried about the group's future, he'd have let it all burn, just to take sole control of the Middle Eastern market himself. Let's go. He gave the order to his employees and strode out of the building. Across the city, Chen Cheng had no idea what was unfolding. In the few hours since he'd left, the Middle East had been thrown into chaos. Wang Ping'an was already deploying every business tactic he had in the Middle East. He and Ziegler moved like a single, ruthless machine, stacking win after win. Take Ancola's real estate portfolio. It had muscled its way into position as one of the strongest commercial developments in the region. Inside the Ancola complex, Ziegler's company took up the third floor and Wang Ping'an's occupied the second. Right next to Wang Ping'an's office stood another commercial tower, Ziegler's tower. Ancola had built its own headquarters right beside Ziegler's, relying on that property as a major revenue stream. And when it came to construction technology, Ancola was world-class, no question. Little by little, Wang Ping'an and Ziegler were easing into the local social circles. The Middle East was complicated. Some people got information easily, others, like them, had to scrape for every scrap. Once their identities were out there, they had no choice but to blend in, build connections, and quietly gather intel day after day. Over the past week, their business activity had picked up pace, and their ambition was starting to show. Ziegler was a young man with serious nerve. Wang Ping'an was the old fox. Together, they were a problem. 2 days later, they had everything in place. The scale of this operation was massive. Everyone in the Middle East was watching. One misstep and the whole thing could collapse. You know what? I bet Keynes is sweating bullets right now. Wang Ping'an couldn't hold back a laugh. He hadn't felt this good in years. His mood was soaring. Ziegler smirked. I'm not worried, honestly. I'm kind of hoping they tear each other apart. Then we just sit back and enjoy the show. Exactly, Wang Ping'an said, grinning. In this part of the world, it wasn't just the wealthy oil barons tracking their every move. Plenty of other players were watching too. So Wang Ping'an and Ziegler had to be exact and no mistakes. The plan was to start here, expand their footprint slowly, and then swallow the whole region in stages. First, take down the key threats. Then chip away at the rest until everything belonged to them. Every move they made was aimed at one man. Keynes, meanwhile. Angola's various assets were already running smoothly, that part was on autopilot. Keynes had started his own preparations. Every move he made drew attention, especially from the powerful factions, but no one struck. They all watched from the shadows, too afraid to act before they saw how things played out. Keynes knew he was being watched. He didn't care in the Middle East. There weren't many people who could stop him. He hadn't been idle. On one front, he was expanding his company. On another, he was quietly building a private reserve of power. This time, his entire strategy was trained on Wang Ping'an. The feud between them had turned into a spectator sport. Everyone was looking for an opening to strike at Wang Ping'an. Keynes saw him as the biggest threat in his coalition with Ziegler. By now, Wang Ping'an and Ziegler had a rock-solid foothold in the region. They already controlled a massive share of the market. It was their primary capital source. Giving it up wasn't an option, so they had to move fast. Lock down those markets. Grow stronger. During this same window, Keynes was quietly laying traps. Others watched him, yes, but his strength had grown enough that he didn't take them seriously. Powerful or not, they were ants to him. His plan was straightforward: wipe out everyone who had eyes on him all at once. Wang Ping'an and Ziegler kept a low profile, constantly expanding their Middle Eastern network. But they never stopped tracking Keynes. Every secret move he made, they catalogued. Secretly, they'd already bought up some of the region's most famous hotels and retail properties on this turf. They were devouring wealth at a vicious pace. Keynes's company kept shuffling assets around, but the money wasn't really his. It came from a tangle of commercial deals between Keynes and several powerful Middle Eastern conglomerates. Those conglomerates didn't want to lose their profits, so they kept pumping in more funds. None of that could stop Wang Ping'an and Ziegler's momentum. The conglomerate's wealth just kept bleeding out. In just 1 month, Wang Ping'an and Ziegler had amassed assets worth $10 billion Middle Eastern dollars. That kind of capital was enough to fund some serious moves. Their wealth snowballed at an insane rate. Under another month, their total assets rocketed to roughly $15 billion. This pace, by the time Keynes finished reshuffling his own, their combined total would break $100 billion. $100 billion meant absolute leverage. They wouldn't have to worry about being squeezed out. No one could push them around. They'd make decisions on their own terms. This whole thing only worked because of the weeks we put in, Wang Ping'an said, looking at Ziegler with a smile. Ziegler smiled back. Yeah. I couldn't have done it without you. Relax. No need for all that. We're brothers. No thanks necessary, right? Chen Cheng looked at Ziegler and added, one more thing. What is it? Ziegler's voice sharpened. Here's the deal. Chen Cheng held his gaze. I'm shipping the goods to Latin America. I need to know if you're okay with that. What the hell does that mean? Ziegler's brow furrowed. You're changing the deal. You want to sell them? His stomach knotted. He hadn't even settled in with the shipment, and now Chen Cheng was behind this. How was he supposed to take that? I went through hell to get those goods back, Ziegler said, his face darkening. Now you want to send them to Latin America and sell them off? Fury simmered in his chest, and no way he'd let Chen Cheng unload them now. Chen Cheng gave a soft laugh. You've got it wrong. I'm not selling them myself. I'm selling them to someone else. Oh. Ziegler blinked, confused. Who could Chen Cheng possibly sell to? Were those goods even worth anything now? Long story. I'm not in a rush to explain. When the time comes, I'll find you and we'll talk details. Chen Cheng rose, a faint smile on his face, ready to leave. What are you playing at? Aren't you worried this will cause panic? If those goods fall into the wrong hands, you're screwed, Ziegler said quickly. You're right that it would cause a stir, but only if there's no panic already. Once panic hits, people will scramble to grab them. They're too tempting. It's a one-time windfall. Chen Cheng smiled again. So as long as we take precautions, it won't happen. And I trust you're not stupid enough to let it happen either. I'm not worried. Ziegler had no words. Fine. If you're set on this, do it. I won't stop you, just don't take it too far. Ziegler exhaled, resignation creeping into his voice. He wasn't the type to nitpick. Chen Cheng had made his choice. Ziegler wouldn't block him. But if Chen Cheng crossed the line, Ziegler would make sure he paid. Don't worry, handle your end. I won't hold you back. Chen Cheng tapped his chest. I'm no genius, but I'm not an idiot. I'll manage the goods myself. None of this will touch you. All right. Ziegler nodded and walked out without another word. Chen Cheng watched him go. A small smile tugged at his lips. My target isn't the goods. It's you. His real objective was Robert's company. If he could get hold of Robert's technology, he could assemble his own R&D team. Right now Robert and Keynes were tight. No cracks in their alliance. Their ultimate goal was obvious. Come after him. Surface level cooperation wasn't enough anymore. Chen Cheng needed a different angle. Robert's company was his best shot. Back at the family headquarters, Keynes wore a stormy expression. He looked at the man beside him. Tell me, how did years of hard work just go down the drain? Mr. Keynes, the loss this time isn't severe. Ziegler has already agreed to help restore the original market price. If we hold on, I believe the market will return to its former level, one of his trusted men said, voice respectful. Keynes scoffed. Robert agreed to help only because his own interests got hammered. But what we lost, that's gone for good. I can't just swallow it. His face twisted with bitterness. He hadn't expected Chen Cheng to push things this far. It was like forcing him and Robert into a complete split. Sir, what do we do? If we don't act, it'll only get worse. The man sounded helpless. Here's what you do. Contact some black market dealers immediately. Tell them we're buying dirt. Don't underestimate them. This is our only play. If we move fast, we can cut our losses. Keynes thought for a moment, then gave the order. His man understood the stakes and hurried out. Keynes, you did this to yourself. If you want to play dirty, don't blame me for playing dirtier. Chen Cheng stared at the photo in his hand and let out a cold smirk. You're really picking a fight with me, aren't you? Ziegler sat in the car, shaking his head with a wry smile as he glanced at Chen Cheng in the passenger seat. The guy had some nerve. Doing something this dangerous. Wasn't he afraid it would blow up in his face? I know what you're thinking. Relax. Nothing's going to happen to you. I keep my word. Don't worry. Chen Cheng grinned. Fine. I respect your decision. Ziegler exhaled. Just don't make me regret it. The situation in the Middle East was more complicated than it looked. At least right now. Robert's funding in the region had completely dried up. If they didn't pull out fast, they'd go bankrupt, and not just them, the organizations backing them could get crushed too. That was why Chen Cheng had made his choice. The Middle East was lighting up with Nokia smartphones. Wang Ping'an had priced his own line around 3,000. Not cheap, but the region had deep pockets, and he knew the buyers would bite. That was never the question. His strategy was simple: stay out of the international crossfire. Nokia had production lines on the mainland, but domestic sales couldn't match the overseas hunger. To squeeze out real profits, the kind that changed the game, they had to go global. And with the tech they were packing now, they could go head-to-head with anyone. At the same time, every major businessman in the Middle East was parked in Wang Ping'an's office, ready to place orders. The phones were shipping now for them. Locking in stock meant locking down the largest slice of the market. Under this distribution model, sell-through was practically guaranteed. All they had to do was push product through their normal channels while the mainland handled the back end. Wang Ping'an genuinely enjoyed this business, sure. Mainland China was an electronics export machine, but the phones still needed foreign markets to explode. That was his focus. He wanted an industry he could shape with his own hands, something that gave him real leverage on a global stage. That was the whole reason he had chosen this sector. His phone business could give him a serious voice internationally. He had also thought about the margins those global phone giants pulled in. Insane. Their products were always the latest craze, and they gobbled up mainland phones in massive quantities. If he could claw back that foreign market share, his profits would go vertical. But that would stir up a hornet's nest at home. The foreign manufacturers believed they were untouchable. They would not tolerate competition. Selling mainland phones to their own buyers without disrupting the mainland economy was a tightrope walk. That was a major reason Wang Ping'an had to go after those overseas players. They were nothing like domestic manufacturers, not nearly as easy to handle. A staff member stepped over and handed him a folder. "Mr. Wang, here's the latest order batch. All deliveries have reached the Middle East. Please review and sign as soon as you can." Wang Ping'an flipped through the pages and looked up. "How many companies?" 19, sir. All of them want to buy our phones for Middle East distribution. They're willing to pay a premium. A faint smile tugged at his lips. The mainland manufacturers knew perfectly well his phones were the hottest thing on the market. They wanted in, but the price was steep. If they could not buy directly, they would find another way. Their plan was to use their own advantage, buy from the mainland and resell to foreign companies. It was a neat little scheme. Wang Ping'an did not like it. He believed his phones were the kings of the world. Only the most cutting-edge smartphones could give them that kind of swagger. Still, the orders were already accepted. No backing out now. Got it. The staff member left. Wang Ping'an pulled out his phone. The screen lit up with messages from Middle Eastern dealers flooding in. All of them wanted partnerships with Nokia, angling to sink sales across the region. They were desperate to climb aboard. "Sure, that works," he said, grinning. Those Middle Eastern manufacturers had burned through serious time and money just to reach him. All that effort for a shot at Nokia's orders, and now they finally had what they wanted. Wang Ping'an did not waste time on pleasantries. He accepted every incoming order without hesitation. The Middle Eastern phone companies kicked into high gear. They were not stupid, they knew they needed to scale production and, more importantly, build their reputation. A solid brand meant more customers and bigger profits. The Middle Eastern phone market was massive, even bigger than the mainland's. Meanwhile, Elsashen Group rolled out a new strategic plan. They were pouring investment into upgrades to boost phone performance. Elsa was running the project herself. She had access to a lot of foreign resources. Those resources, of course, came from Wang Ping'an. She did not know the details. He had simply handed them over, but she loved the work. Wang Ping'an had plenty of faith in his own phones. He was ready to test the waters. If things went well, he would expand. Right now, he was also thinking about building factories abroad and cracking the European market. Let the mainland products rise fast. His goal was not limited to the Middle East or even Europe. His ambitions stretched much further. He knew mainland phone manufacturers were watching their margins shrink, so he planned to enter Europe first, then scoop up the Middle East to fuel his growth overseas. He had better sales channels, a massive advantage. He was confident the Middle Eastern manufacturers would not say no. He did not mind tossing them a few more orders to keep them growing. Give them a taste, and they would come sprinting back, but he would not give them too much. The mainland phone companies still needed to earn, and he did not want to tip his hand too early. Not that he worried about them refusing his orders. The profits were enormous, and they were not fools. By the time the afternoon light slanted through the office windows, Elsa was on a video call with a logistics lead in Frankfurt. Wang Ping'an listened from his desk, half his attention on the call, the other half on a new set of shipment confirmations blinking across his screen. The European test launch was scheduled for Thursday. If it held, the Middle East would be just the beginning. The global balance of power was shifting. The pivot point sat right in the Middle East. Wang Ping'an already owned mining and electronics. His grip on Latin America had been absolute, but now it was starting to crack. Word on the street was that he was pouring resources into Middle Eastern trade. This wasn't paranoia. It lined up with reality. On the international stage, the Latin dollar still held a slim edge over the European currency, but in the Middle East, Latin America barely registered. The region's industries and natural resources made anything Latin America had look small. That sent a chill through global markets. Without serious capital and real power, nobody got a foothold. Wang Ping'an was already charging in. He'd chosen the safest entry point: invest in Middle Eastern oil fields. Those fields were among the richest on Earth, an endless reservoir of fuel and raw material. His plan was simple but massive: build refineries, seize control of the fields, turn every barrel of crude into personal wealth. The numbers were almost beyond calculation. The Middle East was his first stop and his final destination. He had to own that it was a colossal prize. Wang Ping'an intended to take the lion's share. He never doubted him. Locking down the region's oil would be straightforward, and he'd walk away richer than anyone could imagine. And that was just one piece. The real win: he'd chosen this target himself. If the Middle East was step one, what about Latin America? He'd already spotted another juicy play there, and he planned to sink his teeth in deep. Wang Ping'an, The oil fields gleamed like mountains of gold. Grab one patch of land, and the profits would be staggering. The wells here were the largest on the planet, with the biggest reserves. The value of Middle Eastern oil production was mind-blowing, and it wasn't just oil. There was coal, plus rare minerals most people forgot existed. Over the next few years, Wang Ping'an planned to control every resource he could reach. He'd use them to spin endless profits, maybe even underpin an entire country's economy. Those were things you couldn't price. Middle Eastern oil was both the most expensive and the cheapest in the world. Crude practically seeped out of the sand, yet global demand made it priceless. A contradiction that kept the whole market spinning. But if Wang Ping'an invested aggressively, he could tilt the scales, slash costs, and still rake in a fortune. He had a direct path to go straight through the oil companies, buy stakes in their markets. It was a clean play, minimal risk, maximum return. That was why he'd chosen it. He had capital now. He could drop a pile of cash into any corner of the region. The Middle East had location, resources, land. Its population was a force in itself. And it had oil. World-class oil. That was Wang Ping'an's edge. He picked up his phone. Ziegler, find me an oil field nearby, something we can acquire. I'll talk to Mohammed. Ziegler nearly choked when he heard the order. He hadn't expected Wang Ping'an to chase an oil deal. As far as he knew, oil wasn't even in his orbit. There are a couple, Ziegler managed. Good. Let's look at them. Wang Ping'an laughed. I've decided. I'm investing in an oil company here. That won't work. Ziegler tried to shut it down fast. Wang, you have no idea how deep those companies' pockets are. If you're serious, even I can't help you. He meant it. He didn't have the leverage. Too many players stood behind the big companies, and he hadn't even mapped their full backing yet. How could he possibly help? Ziegler, I've already thought about all that. Wang Ping'an's voice was calm. That's why I'm asking. If you were running the oil business, how much profit could you pull? He'd anticipated this conversation long ago. The Middle East had vast resources, but it also had a monstrous oil industry. Everyone wanted a piece, and plenty of them could lose it. The oil companies didn't think that way, though. The oil was theirs. They never worried about margins. They worried about a company failing and dragging down their development. That was why so many people were in the game. These oil companies were their core assets. Control them, and you maximize gains while protecting your turf. Wang, we can't touch Middle Eastern oil. What are you afraid of? I'm not going there to drill. I'm buying oil companies. Don't worry. Ziegler wanted to argue, but in the end, he let it go. If he couldn't stop it, he'd let Wang Ping'an handle it on his own. Wang, I'll contact the heads of those oil companies as soon as I can, pave the way for you, but I can't promise they'll sell. No rush. Wang Ping'an smiled and nodded. He needed a buffer period. A window of opportunity. Only in that time could he slowly infiltrate the Middle East and build his power piece by piece. Ziegler, thanks. When I get back, drinks are on me. Don't mention it. After he hung up, a cold smile spread across Wang Ping'an's face. He could hardly contain his anticipation. It wouldn't be long before the whole Middle East was in his grip. Middle Eastern oil, he murmured, and Wang Ping'an had plenty of business waiting in the Middle East. Wang Ping'an's oil company specialized in transporting Middle Eastern crude. The oil companies there were massive, all fed by petroleum from the region. Crude was their lifeblood. Transporting it wasn't just their most critical business, it was the most dangerous. Those companies operated in every major city, each one wielding serious power. Competition was cutthroat. Any move to dominate the industry would trigger a counterstrike from every rival. Wang Ping'an had solid relationships with them. That was exactly why he'd invested in the region. Gaining control was one of his goals. Ziegler, I need you to look into a company called Cryan Petroleum. Keep it quiet. If it's not convenient, find someone you trust. No problem, Ping'an. Wang Ping'an already knew the Middle East inside out. He'd heard of Cryan Petroleum. The men running those oil outfits were ambitious, arrogant as hell. But the industry itself was enormous. The reserves might not be endless, but oil was still the lifeblood of the region. The companies that controlled it held real power. With their backing, his expansion would accelerate fast. The Middle Eastern oil sector was a behemoth, a massive capital group, the single most powerful force among the petroleum players. It was one of Wang Ping'an's favorite targets. The talent pool in those companies ran deep. He'd zeroed in on them because he saw how rapidly the Middle East was developing, and the untapped potential of its oil. If those companies locked in drilling rights, prices would skyrocket. The region wouldn't have to worry about oil shortages anymore. Their product would sell worldwide. Wang Ping'an let out a low laugh, remembering the day he'd met the CEO of that oil company. The man had been practically buzzing with excitement. Ziegler laughed, too. He'd been studying this oil play for weeks. The more he researched, the more he thought about Wang Ping'an. He realized Wang Ping'an was formidable, a man with real power. He'd always hoped to partner with someone like that. But he also knew Wang Ping'an was ambitious. There was no way he'd let go of the Middle Eastern oil industry. Still, if they could work together, the entire sector would grow even faster. So Ziegler kept turning the idea over in his head. After their negotiation ended, Ziegler immediately reached out to the CEOs of those Middle Eastern oil companies. They were interested in his terms. The conditions he offered were compelling, and the price he named was high, but the demands were steep. These were small companies. Meeting those obligations would be a serious challenge. If they failed to deliver, Ziegler could pull his support at any moment, and those men would be out of work. That left them torn. We need to talk this through, one of them said as they gathered. Mr. Ziegler said if we can bring all the Middle Eastern oil companies on board, he'll provide full financial backing and help us build them up. I think what Mr. Ziegler said makes a lot of sense. I agree. Let's discuss it further. After hashing it out, the CEOs decided to accept the offer. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. If they passed, they might never see another chance this good. A young man in a suit appeared at Ziegler's office door, standing respectfully. Mr. Ziegler, here are the documents you requested. Ziegler took the file and scanned its contents. A detailed contract, terms clearly outlined, annotations clarifying the specifics. Everything authenticated and reliable. Ziegler was dead serious this time. The cooperation promised guaranteed profit. Ziegler's demand was straightforward. Over the next 30 years, the Middle Eastern oil companies would exert maximum influence across the region. Middle Eastern oil would become one of the world's largest supplies, and the companies themselves would grow into a vital global organization with massive profits on the line. They naturally agreed. "All right, we have a deal," Ziegler announced. "Now we can start executing. Mr. Ziegler, we'll do everything we can to cooperate with you." "That's right. If Middle Eastern oil develops, our own growth will follow. We'll work hard to open up the Middle Eastern routes as soon as possible." The CEOs all voiced their commitment. They weren't about to give up on Middle Eastern oil, but unlike Ziegler, they didn't own companies anywhere near that scale. To control the region's oil, they would have to pay a price. The Middle East was the foundation of their wealth. None of them was willing to let go of such a massive slice of the pie, and all of it traced back to Wang Ping'an. His identity was mysterious, his background immense, his standing among the Middle Eastern oil companies was sky high. The CEOs knew Wang Ping'an's roots ran deep, so they approached this cooperation with extreme caution. Ziegler led the group of oil executives to meet with several key high-level figures in the Middle Eastern oil industry. In that part of the world, Ziegler carried enormous weight. The oil people there held him in the highest regard. "Mr. Ziegler, we hope you'll consider our terms carefully. If this partnership fails, the losses will hit us hard. You already know that." The Eastern China oil tycoon kept his tone low and measured. Ziegler smiled. "I'm optimistic about this collaboration. I'm confident Eastern China oil will thrive. This oil trade project will succeed. Our company has enormous potential, but we'd still be taking on considerable risk. Are you sure this deal is worth it?" The tycoon studied Ziegler closely. For a young foreigner to speak with that kind of bold certainty had caught the Eastern China oil executives off guard. None of them could figure out where the audacity came from. Did he seriously believe they could fully tap their reserves? "Mr. Ziegler, we urge you to think this through," another executive added, his face tight with skepticism. The project was undeniably tempting, but the dangers were real. Eastern China's oil fields were rich. This region was critical to their survival. If they couldn't sustain development over the next 3 decades, the entire company would be worthless, and every dollar poured into it would vanish. For Eastern China oil, this partnership was a gamble. Ziegler listened, then shook his head with a calm smile. "Don't worry. I'll deliver. I'm very confident in this venture." His tone didn't waver, and they believed him. They knew exactly what a young man like him was capable of. "Fine. If you're that confident, we'll proceed as you suggest. I'm looking forward to seeing Eastern China oil grow fast." Once the deal was finalized, Ziegler returned to the city. The moment he landed, he called Boss Wang to brief him. Boss Wang was pleased. "Ha! Good. I'll leave this in your hands." "Boss Wang, I've wrapped everything up here. I'm heading back to the mainland," Ziegler said cheerfully. "Great. Come straight to the office when you get back. I'm putting you in charge of this entirely." Boss Wang had stepped back from day-to-day operations. He was enjoying life now, channeling all his energy into cultivation. His strength was formidable, only one step away from breaking into the heavenly rank. He lived a life anyone would envy. And he savored every moment of it. He admired Ziegler too. The young man had extraordinary talent, sharp business instincts, and relentless ambition. He was going places fast. Having someone like that by his side made Boss Wang proud. Boss Wang's products were sold worldwide, generating staggering annual profits. That was exactly why he valued Ziegler so highly. He intended for him to be his successor. "I'll be back as soon as possible," Ziegler confirmed. His trip to the city had been primarily to meet the Eastern China oil tycoon and discuss the partnership terms. He'd come prepared, well stocked with resources and people. Ziegler's reputation in the city was solid. The tycoon would definitely take the meeting. He wasn't just there for his own business, he was watching out for Boss Wang. Boss Wang was his mentor, and Ziegler made sure his safety was never compromised. Later, Ziegler placed a call to the oil magnate. His voice was grave. "Our Eastern China oil project is now officially seeking investment from your country. We hope for a smooth collaboration." The arrangement was brutally straightforward. Use Eastern China's oil to transport all their crude away, fueling rapid growth for both companies. Ziegler waited for a response. "What the hell is this? What are you trying to pull? You're infringing on Eastern China Oil's interests. Don't you realize how unethical that is?" The tycoon's voice crackled with fury. He had been confident about his company's expansion, aggressively pushing into new markets. But Ziegler and his team had already been pouring money into Eastern China, buying up oil raw materials. If they weren't from the city, the tycoon would have thrown them out on the spot. "As I said, this is a joint venture. We'll provide your company with plenty of raw materials. Some of those materials will go to you, but in exchange, you'll give us half of your mines. We'll work together to develop all of Eastern China's resources." Ziegler's smile was all business. His goal wasn't just profit, he intended to turn Eastern China Oil into his own company. These vast raw materials were too big for them to monopolize. They had no choice but to cooperate. Only then would Ziegler reap the massive rewards. "You're serious? You want our raw materials?" The Eastern China Oil tycoon's voice crackled with anger. "Ziegler, you must be joking. I don't joke about business." Ziegler's tone was ice. "I'm making this deal happen. If you're not in, we pretend this conversation never took place. Here's a warning, check your ego. You're on Eastern soil now. Dial it back, or you'll find yourself in a very awkward position." The tycoon laughed. "Threat for threat. If you want to throw your weight around, I'm right here." Ziegler said it flat, almost bored. To him, this so-called Eastern Titan was nothing stacked against the real power players in the region. The man barely registered. Ziegler saw Eastern China Oil's people as small-time operators, nothing more. "Mr. Ziegler, watch yourself. Our partnership still has room to grow. Keep this up and the whole thing collapses." The tycoon's voice went cold. A faint smile crossed Ziegler's face. "You really think there's room to grow between us?" "Of course there is, but we both need to communicate like reasonable men." The tycoon's voice dropped, straining for control. Ziegler's smile didn't budge. "Don't trouble yourself. I'll reach out." The tycoon was practically choking. Eastern China Oil and the other majors, their bosses had all been scrambling to get Ziegler's ear. He'd shut every one of them out. No meetings. Every message had to filter through third parties. And now Ziegler was telling them he didn't need to hear anything at all, that he was done with them. It was a straight-up insult. Your Eastern China oil flows through my hands. I sell what I want, to whoever I want. Ziegler stared down the line, knowing the tycoon was desperate for a deal. He wouldn't bend alone, he could grind Eastern China oil into the dirt. Fine. We won't force it. Let's table this. The tycoon was furious and helpless. Ziegler's arrogance was absolute. He clearly had zero respect for him. With Wang Ping'an backing him, Ziegler had no reason to flinch. Every move he made carried Wang's silent approval. And Ziegler's own position was formidable. His oil company was a major force. If Ziegler dared disrespect his operation, the tycoon wouldn't hesitate to make him pay. All right. We'll suspend things for now. Once your Eastern China resources are fully lined up, you come to me. Ziegler sounded almost cheerful. Fine. We'll wait and see. Eastern China oil isn't short of money. I'm confident we'll outperform you. The tycoon's voice was rigid. Is that so? We'll see about that. I hope your company can hold its ground, otherwise, I'm afraid this is the end of the line. Ziegler smiled and ended the call. The moment the call dropped, his expression hardened. He checked his watch. 5 in the afternoon. Wang Ping'an had drafted an exhaustive plan for Eastern China oil. They needed a massive number of wells, plus the engineering crews to do the groundwork. Money poured out like water, but with federal savings backing them, not a single dollar was a problem. Ziegler glanced at Wang Ping'an, who broke into a grin. Between the two of us, we've really stirred up a hornet's nest. I bet those bosses are squirming right now. Ha! They shared a knowing laugh. Wang Ping'an's strategy was dead on. Once he held real control over Eastern China oil operations, the profits would be staggering. And that kind of profit would bring serious influence, maybe even international blowback. Right now, though, Wang only held 30%. That had him rolling in money, but it wasn't enough to truly sway Eastern China oil. He needed bigger margins, wider reach, and he had to win local approval. That was his immediate goal. It was also why he'd poured $100 million into this play. Wang knew the price. It would hit him hard, but he had no choice. This was the road he'd chosen. He had to gamble. And right now, he'd won. Ziegler had won right alongside him. Ziegler had carried him through the whole fight, securing the funds. That infusion would double Wang's net worth and net him a handsome reward. Wang was grateful and relieved. This was exactly what he'd been gunning for. Mr. Ziegler, I owe you. Without you, I'd never have landed that kind of cash. It's nothing. I saw it coming from the beginning. Ziegler smiled. By the way, I have good news. The residents on that land you gave me are extremely happy. Every one of them is grateful. They said they want to pay their respects. Oh, is that right? I saw it myself. Those people genuinely appreciate what you did. It proves they made the right call. Ziegler laughed. Mr. Wang, thank you for saying that. Ha ha. They talked about other things until evening, then stepped out of the room. Ziegler walked outside, muttering under his breath. Those guys are too slippery. Every time they leave a mess for me to clean up. He'd put real work into this, knowing they'd probably seen it coming and set him up. Still, he hadn't expected them to play this dirty. Ziegler paced the length of the room, then stopped in front of a closed door. He gave it a light knock. The door swung open. A familiar face stared back at him. Ziegler broke into a grin. Finally decided to show your face, huh? Ping'an gave him a wounded look. Ziegler just laughed harder, shaking his head at how these two were acting like a pair of kids. Ping'an cracked a smile too. He knew Ziegler was messing with him, but he played along anyway. I've been buried the last few days. Didn't have a single second to spare. I've been busting my ass non-stop, and now that I finally catch a break, you won't even cut me some slack? He put on the most pitiful expression he could manage. Ziegler shook his head. You weren't here, so I couldn't relax either. Not everyone gets to kick back like you. Chmph. Ping'an snorted and ignored him. Ziegler chuckled. I came to check on the oil transport. How's that going? Almost wrapped up. Good. I'll head back and get things ready. Go ahead, take your time. The contract's signed. All we're doing now is waiting for the cooperation phase to kick in. Ping'an nodded. He knew Ziegler had pulled off something major this time. A genuine win. He'd been running non-stop lately, not just with company business, but mostly in talks with those domestic oil tycoons. They were razor-sharp, top-tier minds, clear vision, real skill. He respected that. He needed to learn from them. His reason for partnering with them was straightforward. He wanted their muscle to push the Eastern China oil project forward, to make it stronger and more profitable. Smart play. During those negotiations, he'd made it clear he wanted deeper collaboration on the project. They were thrilled. They knew that if Ping'an's project succeeded, they'd reap even bigger rewards. That was exactly what they wanted. These were all business elites. They understood the stakes cold. The stronger his project got, the better it was for them, so they went all in. Once everything was locked down, Ping'an had Ziegler deliver the shipment straight into their territory. 5 specialized trucks would haul the goods across, then blanket every inch of Eastern China's oil land. Every worker would look at this city, their people, and know they'd earned what was coming to. As soon as the convoy rolled in, locals swarmed the trucks. Their reaction was even bigger than Ziegler had expected. Simple, good-hearted people. When they spotted Ping'an's trucks, cheers erupted. On Ping'an's orders, every vehicle pulled to a stop. Everyone just stared, stunned. Ziegler allowed himself a dry smile. The residents' fervor was a good sign. Their trust in Ping'an ran deeper than he'd imagined. But with all this energy, his original plan couldn't proceed. Still, over the next few days, he could use this momentum to get more done, speed things along. After about a week in Eastern China, Ping'an headed back. Ziegler had been slammed. Their next move was to partner with the major local corporations. He needed to study them first. It would strengthen their collaboration. Once Ping'an was gone, Ziegler put his plan into motion. Ping'an had spent hours in deep conversation with the heads of those companies. He'd even met their CEOs face to face. Every one of them praised him, calling him an exceptional manager. They were hungry to deepen the partnership. After those meetings, he had a much clearer picture of their operations, names, territories, production volumes, product quality. He knew all of it. These companies produced at massive scale and used cutting-edge tech. They weren't as large as his own group, but their influence across Eastern China was enormous. After meeting them, Ping'an felt confident the deal would go through. A sense of belonging settled over him. This was his empire now. He was the most successful man on the board. With all this territory under his control, if he kept pushing, his future achievements would be staggering. He believed this partnership would bring in massive profits. Ziegler was riding the high too. He felt like he'd done something monumental. Not only did he walk away with substantial benefits, but his prestige in Eastern China shot through the roof. He'd earned every bit of it. My contacts here are very enthusiastic about Eastern China and eager to work with us, Ping'an told Ziegler. I'm confident their interests will be well protected for a long time to come. Ping'an's trip had been a success. He'd accomplished his main objective. Once things in Eastern China were wrapped up, he could head straight to Love Island. Marine resource development was another promising avenue. Ziegler's expression brightened at that. This was huge for him. He wanted to establish a new marine resource company on Love Island. The ocean wasn't just for fishing, you could build an entire entertainment industry out there. If they could invest in that massive sector, their capital would flow steadily around the globe. Their company would make enormous strides across Central Asia and even the broader Pan-Asian region. The real challenge: finding enough money. Wang Ping'an was done waiting. He planned to build a new marine resource company on Love Island. The ocean wasn't just for fishing. It could support an entire entertainment industry, tap into a sector that massive, and his money would flow worldwide, his company scoring huge wins across Central Asia and beyond. The funding issue was enormous. Launching a new company on Love Island would cost a fortune, but if he went with an amusement park, the initial outlay dropped dramatically. He scanned the documents. A smile spread across his face. Love Island was a goldmine. The largest marine resource market in the world, with an economy so powerful it held hundreds of billions in assets. Building here was the smartest move on earth. An amusement park would slash his investment to 1/10 of a full-scale operation. Constructing a massive entertainment city on Love Island was now critical. He'd made up his mind. The profits would be staggering if he pulled it off. A difficult choice. Demanding investors' capital, time. But refusing wasn't an option. He could only say yes. Love Island was one of his strategic targets. He was ready. The island would be his. He believed in his ability. This investment would bring a massive windfall. His fingers tapped steadily on the desk. His mind raced, searching for the right angle. The island's resources were incredibly rich. An entertainment city here meant staggering returns for him and his group. A market this huge had every company on the planet hungry for a piece. He couldn't wait. He'd start with one project: developing tourism. Not hotels, genuine tourism and entertainment. Love Island's tourism sector was the most advanced and prosperous in the world, with the broadest tourist base and the biggest attractions anywhere. He would pour massive manpower and materials into constructing a gigantic amusement park. That park would draw huge crowds. Top global tycoons, politicians, business leaders, entertainment moguls. They'd bring money and connections. Love Island was the largest, most developed metropolis on Earth. Mr. Wang, I'm Pierre, the Love Island director. I heard you're interested in developing coastal tourism. Pierre walked in and smiled. What area are you looking to invest in? Wang Ping'an looked up, returning the smile. I want to invest in the most developed coastal waters. I want to build a vast, majestic, high-tech, romantic place. A magical underwater world. Pierre frowned. Mr. Wang, surely you know our biggest tourism draw is already the underwater world. We have endless environments, and they generate enormous revenue, hundreds of billions of dollars. The income is staggering. He held Wang Ping'an's gaze, waiting. This was a massive investment project for Love Island, and Pierre hoped Wang Ping'an would think it over carefully. On this island, the underwater world was the biggest tourism project, with profit potential insane enough to drive anyone crazy. Wang Ping'an's mouth curved slightly. This project would attract even more investors, and they'd all reap huge rewards. His own income would be impressive too. His heart pounded. Mr. Pierre, can we discuss the underwater world in more detail? His expression was serious. Pierre smiled. Of course. I think we can work very well together. Mr. Wang. You're an excellent investor. I trust your judgment, and Love Island has incredibly vast resources. You must understand that. Wang Ping'an nodded. He knew exactly how huge those resources were. Beyond seawater, the island held countless precious minerals, vegetation, animals, fish, and rare species. Their value was sky high, generating massive tax revenue. A huge pile of money. A resource treasure trove like Love Island was absolutely worth the investment. This project was a massive opportunity. If they built a gigantic underwater amusement park, the returns would be incalculable. Images of underwater scenes flashed through his mind. Mr. Pierre, how do you think we should build this park? He asked. Love Island had many sea turtles. They thrived in the vast underwater world, the ocean's living treasures. They lived on land but flourished in the sea, swimming freely, nourished and at ease. Wang Ping'an leaned forward. Let's start with a sea turtle resort. Large-scale turtle breeding. Release them. Wang Ping'an stared at Pierre. Releasing sea turtles into the wild was a massive operation. They couldn't afford a single mistake. What if the turtles didn't adapt to the area and simply swam off? We release a set number at a time, Pierre said, clearly satisfied. One turtle can support tens of thousands in the ecosystem, but if we scale up to 100,000 or more, the dynamic shifts. They'll roam the open ocean freely. Brilliant. Wang Ping'an's grin widened. Once those turtles settle in, I have a feeling they'll love these waters. The plan suited them perfectly. I want more than that, though. Pierre's voice sharpened. I need access to the marine resources of the underwater world, resources you can't put a price on. I want enough capital ready in the short term to launch full-scale development. That was his real goal. An aggressive development plan. The underwater resources are enormous, Wang Ping'an agreed. With our current investment, we've barely scratched the surface. If Li Changyu hadn't squeezed us so hard on pricing, we wouldn't have pushed this decision so fast. But I can promise you one thing, we'll develop those resources as quickly as possible. After that, the real money starts flowing. Wang Ping'an was convinced. Unlock the underwater resources, and they'd rake in serious profits. He could become the richest man on the mainland. Good, Pierre said with a nod. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. Wang Ping'an held his gaze. We have to pace ourselves. You need to understand, this is a long-term play. Once we start, we'll need massive capital infusions. Our reserves might not keep up. Don't worry about that. I've already found the right investor. This project will attract serious money. Pierre's confidence was absolute. Wang Ping'an frowned. He hadn't heard about this. But if Pierre had someone in mind, he was curious to see just how deep their pockets went. Then I'll be watching with great interest. Wang Ping'an smiled. Pierre's eyes lit up. Wang Ping'an, I think we need to meet this person soon. We'll lay out the whole plan. She'll help us. Wang Ping'an's curiosity sharpened. What kind of person are we talking about? Give me some details so I can prepare. Pierre offered a faint smile. He only told Wang Ping'an that this individual held a very special status. Definitely not your average figure. Love Island was home to multiple dukes. The titles were hereditary, awarded for major contributions. Unlike other places, these titles existed primarily to serve the commercial system. Rank could decide a lot. Duchess Louise. She's only a minor duchess, but when it comes to coastal development, she wields real power. Pierre warned that they needed to seize the moment. One wrong move and they could offend her. The key was to avoid conflict and build cooperation. Don't worry, Wang Ping'an said with a smile. I know how to read a room. The meeting with Duchess Louise was set in a development zone on Love Island, a hub for major business groups. Wang Ping'an, this is Duchess Louise, the woman I've told you so much about. Pierre gestured with clear respect. In his view, Louise's influence along the entire coast was unmatched. Partnering with her was an obvious win. Duchess Louise. A true pleasure. Wang Ping'an handed her a small box with a gallant smile. This is for you. It's not about the price tag. It's about the gesture. Louise smiled, rose to shake his hand, then slowly opened the box. Inside lay an exquisite diamond ring, at least 3 carats. Mr. Huang, do you always come on this strong? Louise laughed, unable to hide her delight. Her status was respectable, but no one had ever given her a gift quite like this. First impressions matter. This is just a token of my sincerity. And frankly, Pierre couldn't stop singing your praises. Wang Ping'an was a natural at breaking the ice. He knew exactly how to steer a conversation. He kept control of the rhythm, and everything flowed smoothly. I hear you want to develop this stretch of sea, not just the beach, but the entire 1-kilometer coastal zone, into an amusement park. Louise admitted she'd never encountered such an approach. She needed to understand Wang Ping'an's exact intentions. The idea is actually simple. I want to build an underwater world and a seaside amusement park spanning the entire area. With Love Island's natural environment, it wasn't difficult, and it would massively expand his influence. You're right about that. I can't give you unlimited authority, but I can promise you the entire sea area. Duchess Louise pulled out a reference plan. Someone had actually attempted Wang Ping'an's concept 2 years ago. They'd gone bankrupt halfway through and fled the market in disgrace. Wang Ping'an glanced at the plan and laughed. This isn't some rural research project. Can I just say the person who tried this before was incompetent? He argued that this approach, no matter where, even with powerful backing, would never succeed. Consumers simply wouldn't buy into it. That was the harsh reality. They were running a business. Everything had to serve the customer. If the target audience wasn't satisfied, who was going to pay? So my project won't just succeed. It'll be a smash hit from day one. Wang Ping'an insisted that Love Island's environment was unprecedented. Whether it became an international resort depended entirely on their planning. I'll say it again, whatever Mr. Huang wants to do, Louise will give you her full support. Duchess Louise agreed with a smile. She told him her company was located in Love Island's central business district, and effective immediately, she was handing over the development rights for the beach. She signaled her assistant, who brought out the prepared contracts. They were ready to go. I can't thank you enough, Wang Ping'an said, gripping the legal documents. Everything was in order. Now he could push his plans forward at full speed. The island was crawling with construction crews, and not just any crews. Top-shelf talent. Building here wasn't for beginners. This was nothing like throwing up commercial real estate on the mainland. You needed specialized design engineers, the kind who charged triple the international standard, but you got what you paid for. Anyone commanding that kind of money had to be exceptional. Everything on my end is ready, Wang Ping'an said. Now it comes down to your vision. He smiled and spread out his blueprints. He marked key zones and pulled up a 3D modeling program on his computer. I didn't expect someone from the mainland to use this software, one engineer said, genuine surprise in his voice. The software was standard for overseas work, housing layouts, and interior designs, but Wang Ping'an dove deeper, plugging in formulas and tearing through every detail. Within minutes, a massive site model filled the screen. Scale it to proportion. I expect that's well within your skill set. Wang Ping'an shot the engineer a quick grin. The man nodded once, firm and certain. The engineering team numbered over 50 people. They didn't just execute plans, they refined every angle. Unlike mainland crews, these people operated with deeper specialization. Any one of them could run a project solo. I'm impressed with this team, Pierre. Would you introduce me to your boss? Admiration crept into Wang Ping'an's tone. Sorry, but I am the boss. These are all my employees. Pierre gave him a dry smile. He knew exactly what Wang Ping'an was after. Then how about this? I'll invest in your company. Or, if you prefer, I'll buy you out entirely. Wang Ping'an didn't dance around the point. He needed these people. The industries he was about to expand into would benefit enormously from engineers of this caliber. They could quietly reshape the possibilities of any location. This was Q3 of 2006. His golden window. He wasn't about to waste the resources sitting in his hands. Letting that slide would be the same as burning money. You invest, I'll give you shares. We build a reputation, and we break out of this island. Pierre laid out an unwritten rule. Wholly domestic companies couldn't expand overseas. Only joint ventures could go global. That sounds restrictive, but that's the reality, isn't it? We don't get to choose. Maybe so. But does your island really want to stay locked out of the global economy? Wang Ping'an was puzzled. The island's exports were minimal, While imports dominated everything, outsiders had to use proxies just to buy local products. That stale arrangement had sat unchanged for years. Because a fee is involved, now that you're here, my company can form a joint venture and enter the global market legitimately. Pierre had made his decision the moment Wang Ping'an showed interest, and even if Wang Ping'an bought the company outright, there was a catch. The construction team could expand globally, but they'd lose all their island benefits. Working for a foreign-owned company wasn't what these engineers had signed up for. That makes sense. I hear you loud and clear. Wang Ping'an didn't argue. He simply told Pierre that from this point forward, he'd need to have a serious conversation with Louise. He held the development rights, but there was a problem. Local materials were absurdly expensive. He planned to import supplies, but the island had no shipping channels. Even using his own fleet or air freight would cost him a fortune. That's a minor issue. Now that we're partners, I'll handle it. Louise had the authority. She needed him to provide a public facility on the beach that would serve as payment. After that, Wang Ping'an wouldn't owe extra fees for the process. Anything more would violate regulations. No problem. I really can't thank you enough. Wang Ping'an hung up, excitement threading through his voice. For the first time, he understood this was exactly the position he wanted. Without this connection, he'd probably be dead in the water. He muttered, "Everything's manageable, nothing to worry about." When the supply convoy arrived, Wang Ping'an organized the workers and got everything unloaded. He gave the construction team a deadline. 1 year, by Q3 of the following year, every project had to be fully implemented. The scope was enormous, no room for half measures. Finishing this facility would elevate his profile on the island, widening the gap between him and any rivals. That was Wang Ping'an's strategy, built on a very simple foundation, and no one could block him. Everything was unfolding exactly as he'd envisioned, or so he believed. "I can't believe you already had the whole route mapped out the moment you called me here." Ziegler couldn't stop grinning. He'd been curious why Wang Ping'an had summoned him the second he'd landed. Ziegler hadn't hesitated. He'd flown straight from the Middle East. "The island's not bad right now. It's developed, after all." But Wang Ping'an said the beachfront plans weren't enough. He intended to build a high-end VIP hotel. "What are you trying to do? Fleece the rich?" Ziegler froze, stunned by how far Wang Ping'an's thinking had already jumped. "Isn't that the point? We're in business to make money, aren't we?" Wang Ping'an shot Ziegler a look. The man had been with him long enough. Shouldn't he get it by now? Ziegler shrugged helplessly. If Wang Ping'an said it, they'd do it. No negotiation, so he needed to start replanning. "Wang, you're talking about a 5-star hotel. That means far higher costs." Ziegler pointed out their resort model could draw inspiration from a handful of small islands in the Malay region. Those were true paradise destinations, and the spending levels certainly weren't low. "The facilities on those islands are extremely expensive. I really need to spell it out." That went without saying. Wang Ping'an wasn't stupid. Handling this stuff came naturally. Ziegler had to admit, ever since meeting Wang Ping'an, his own IQ had felt like it was taking a beating. Every interaction shattered another piece of his worldview, and lately, that had happened a few more times. "But how big are you thinking?" Ziegler asked. An island this size needs a massive transport operation plus top-tier design concepts. That's not something you pull off overnight. You're really shooting for the moon. Ziegler shook his head. The request was enormous. He couldn't make it happen anytime soon, but Wang Ping'an wasn't backing down. These problems had to be solved now. I know it's tough, but if we work from the coast, the problems disappear. I've already found some small islands offshore we can use for shipping, and I can provide more advanced technology. Ziegler's eyes lit up. If that were true, maybe there was a way. What's your plan? Wang Ping'an smiled and shook his head. I don't have one yet. Tell me when you come up with something. He turned and walked toward the villa door, ready to get some rest. Ziegler watched him go and let out a helpless sigh. The world really was strange. He'd met someone this bizarre, and despite everything, he was glad to know him. Truly interesting people were rare. Wang Ping'an was one of a kind, not because his mind worked like everyone else's, but because he possessed extraordinary intelligence and imagination, almost mysteriously so. Our first shipment of imported goods is here. We can start setting up. Good, bring out what we've prepared. Ziegler saw a truck hauling a mountain of cargo toward his villa, and his heart started pounding. He couldn't wait to see the effect these first imports would have. When the doors opened, his eyes went wide. A massive glass display case stood there, stuffed with products, so many it was dizzying. Some looked beautiful but had no real function, and Ziegler swallowed hard. In that moment, he finally understood what Wang Ping'an was doing. He was building a premium marketplace right on the beach, turning the whole area into a tourist destination. These are the products we've prepared this time. Browse at your leisure. Wang Ping'an stepped up and introduced each item, with prices clearly marked. They were fair, no rip-offs, which immediately won over the crowd. That was exactly what Wang Ping'an wanted. More eyes on his products, more sales. Ziegler stared at the display, his shock growing. He'd seen plenty of valuable items in his time, but this assortment grabbed him. There were at least 500 or 600 sets, each one unique and strikingly fresh. So that's the plan. Wang Ping'an was pleased with the reaction, especially Ziegler's. He'd personally crafted every item, pricing each one based on current market conditions. He knew his vision wouldn't come together overnight, but that couldn't be helped given his status. He needed to get more people on board without anyone saying he'd pulled strings. I made a rough projection based on the data you gave me. If we roll all of this out, our sales will skyrocket. He saw the stunned looks on their faces and kept explaining, laying out his thinking. That's insane. The group could barely believe it. Pick one. I promise you'll love it. Wang Ping'an smiled. He knew these people had status and influence. His words would land. Go ahead. Choose one. Whichever you pick, it's yours. He added that extra push. Rich people couldn't resist a deal like this. The quality was outstanding. They were tempted. If you need to, recommend them to your channel partners. Remember, we've got 2 massive cargo ships this time. Wang Ping'an's tone was casual, but this was his trump card. Channel partners were his sales pipeline. They could handle any suitable business, generate massive revenue, and lend their reputation to make his business boom. Mr. Wang, you're absolutely right. We'll go find our channel partners right now. You all keep talking. We'll be back soon. One man nodded eagerly, then turned and led his team out the door. He couldn't wait to look into the product's strengths and weaknesses before deciding his next move. Ziegler watched them leave, then turned back to Wang Ping'an. "Okay, let's move on to other matters." "Sure." Wang Ping'an nodded, a smug smile curling at the corner of his mouth. This was exactly what he'd wanted. He could establish himself as a formidable figure in their eyes. Only by showing them how good his products really were could he crush their pride and inspire more people to buy into his new line. More customers meant even bigger demand. This was just the initial groundwork, nothing substantial yet, but the later stage would be completely different. Wang Ping'an needed to build momentum and expand his network. That was something Pierre and Louise could never give him. He had to solve his problems his own way. Island Coast had an exclusive circle, the Pan-Asia Chamber of Commerce. They brought in every high-end brand imaginable, but import prices were brutal. Few had the connections Wang Ping'an did. Even fewer could slash costs like him. Everything he sourced was top shelf, no outdated inventory, no knockoffs. "Your goods are already taking the whole island by storm. I've heard plenty of wealthy people have come knocking at your door." Louise smiled faintly. This result was only natural. Wang Ping'an had a gift for spotting openings, fast and efficient. These luxury items might not impress you much, but to the rich folks here, they're new, exciting. She wasn't being sarcastic. Local industries were decent, but they couldn't match European luxury. The cutting edge of global trends was out of reach for most. Competition here was cutthroat. Homegrown brands couldn't just leapfrog ahead with everything stacked against them. The old model was finished. The best answer was a middleman to lead the trend, someone who set the pace. Clearly, that someone was Wang Ping'an. With him in the game, things would move fast. "I plan to push all these products through, but there's one thing I'll need your help with." Wang Ping'an laid it out straight. No games. Using foreign products to take over the Island Coast market. "Are you sure that's going to work?" Louise's expression darkened. It sounded like a long shot. "Whether it works doesn't depend on what we think. It comes down to market conversion rates and how consumers respond." Wang Ping'an saw clearly. His snack business had started small too. Now he was moving into luxury, and 2 full cargo shipments would fatten his bank account nicely. No complaints there. "I can't quite figure you out. You're a mystery to me." Louise let out a wry laugh. He was unpredictable. She couldn't pin him down. "As long as we crack the market, I don't mind taking a small loss. The real question is whether Island Coast will embrace this model. If it does, we'll have nothing to worry about." And it turned out, Island Coast was ready. No pushback. Business owners scrambled for his products, happy to pay premium prices. That meant, in the year before his coastal development project launched, he could quietly lay down the entire inland supply chain in Island Coast. For him, that was historic. Once these products hit, the Island Coast market would explode. When his company officially launched, the profits would be massive. He knew exactly how valuable these goods were, but the full picture would only reveal itself after success. "So what's your plan?" Louise asked, genuinely curious. "All that has to stay confidential for now. You won't know until after I make it happen." Wang Ping'an shrugged. To Louise, he was like a dragon. You only ever caught glimpses, Never the whole thing. He kept his cards close. She understood he wasn't an ordinary man. If the wrong people got wind of his moves, it could mean real trouble. Can I trust you? Louise's voice wavered. She didn't fully understand, but she believed in him. I'm Wang Ping'an. Do you really think there's anything I can't pull off? He laughed, and something in her expression softened him. She was an interesting woman. You're such a freak. She rolled her eyes. This man was anything but simple. Shouldn't someone like him be back on the mainland? Why island coast? I'm just an ordinary guy living on this piece of land. Whether it's the mainland or island coast, I've got one goal: build my own company. That's how I'll stand on solid ground and have a real voice in the island coast business scene. As he spoke, his eyes locked onto hers. Something magnetic pulled her in. She couldn't look away. A strange, intense rush, but not unpleasant. He was dangerous, yet there was a unique charm there, irresistible. Part of her craved it, but she didn't want to give him the upper hand. She forced herself to look away, her gaze unsteady. I hope we can agree. You can expand however you like, but I need to know, how much are you planning to invest? 3 million island coast dollars. Wang Ping'an answered without hesitation. Some tycoons, that was pocket change, but to Louise, it hit hard. It could dent her income for the next decade. 3 million? She hadn't expected that. In her mind, Wang Ping'an was just some rich kid. She'd run background checks, found nothing. His identity was too well hidden, even she couldn't unearth it. What? You think the offer's too low? Wang Ping'an smiled. No, I think the amount is small. She shook her head. For some wealthy people, it was nothing, but for a business person, it represented real sacrifice. Every dollar earned through hard work and struggle. I believe with your help, we'll make money fast. I bet you want your own company too. I can offer you equity on one condition: you follow my lead. His smile was easy. Louise carried serious weight in island coast. Her cooperation would save him a mountain of headaches. Louise fell silent. He was right. In this environment, owning his own company was the only way to survive. I'll accept your terms, Louise finally said. Building something for myself, that's what matters most to me. She trusted someone like Chen Cheng. He'd earned that much. Good. Chen Cheng clapped his hands together once, sharp and satisfied. He loved dealing with smart people, and Louise was exactly the kind of sharp partner he appreciated. Too many of the players he'd run into lately had slowed him down. But this time things felt different. He was confident he'd find his rhythm again soon. Since we have a deal, he said, I need your help. Louise wasn't stupid. She already knew why he'd come. He wouldn't have sought her out unless she had something he wanted. And only she truly understood what that something was and why it mattered. A small smile tugged at Chen Cheng's lips. This woman impressed him, beautiful and bold. What do you need? Louise asked directly. I can make it happen. For her, if Chen Cheng delivered on his promises, she had to deliver in return. Otherwise, the arrangement wouldn't sit right. Good. Then tell me, how much do I stand to gain from this partnership right from the start? His smile widened. To him, this was just a smart gambled, no downside, plenty of upside. That's fair, Louise said, a win for both of us. She smiled, But not just at his words. She'd spotted something unusual, something that might finally help her achieve a long-held dream. Then I'm looking forward to working together. Chen Cheng extended his right hand. I hope you can help me with what you promised as soon as possible. A faint blush crept across Louise's cheeks, but she reached out her left hand and shook his. It was their first handshake. We'll take it slow, Chen Cheng said, a smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. This deal was shaping up nicely. Here's to a successful partnership. Louise let out a light laugh. Today had turned out to be one of her easiest, a rare and valuable experience. I'll take you to Ao Island now. Rest tonight. We'll go over the details tomorrow. Chen Cheng nodded, pleased with her attitude. It saved him a lot of trouble. Louise returned the nod, understanding what he meant. As a public figure, being seen too often with a man would draw unwanted attention. That was exactly why she'd kept her distance before. She didn't want problems for her family. On Ao Island, Louise led him to a luxurious villa in an exclusive neighborhood. You'll stay here. I hope the surroundings don't disappoint, she said, a smile still playing on her lips. The villa sat in the most bustling district on the island, one of the top residential areas. Real estate here was astronomically expensive. A villa like this could cost tens of millions of dollars and still be nearly impossible to purchase. But to Louise, it was nothing. Chen Cheng's lips curved. She'd treated him well. Thank you. I love it. It's not as grand as a five-star hotel, but it feels warm and comfortable, he said. And he meant it. Don't mention it. We're friends. She meant every word. The view was stunning, and she'd never been treated like this before. It made her happy, and it confirmed she'd made the right choice. Chen Cheng smiled. Louise was a clever woman. She pulled the car up and parked in front of the villa. Please, step out. This is your home now, she said cheerfully. She already knew he liked the place. Chen Cheng got out and walked inside, taking in the large fountain and the garden. This is a wealthy neighborhood. You'll be safe here, Louise added. Thanks for looking out for me. At that, her smile deepened. It felt good to earn his praise. You're welcome, she said. Now we can continue our earlier conversation. Chen Cheng shrugged. His target was Louise herself. Everything else was secondary. Gaining her trust was a major win. She met his eyes and nodded, ready for him to state his demands. My request is simple. I need your technology. His smile returned. Her expectations seemed almost childish to him, but he knew she'd agree. She was too smart not to. He'd been laying the groundwork to break into the luxury goods market on Ao Island for a long time, but making it happen wasn't easy. He had diamonds and jewelry. The challenge was turning them into must-haves for the elite. He knew that if he wanted people to chase these products, their value had to be undeniable. The highest value possible. But what was the best thing in the world? Money, diamonds. Those prices had already been driven sky-high in any other market. Items like this would be little more than trinkets, but here, in this ultra-luxury commercial hub, spending power dwarfed the outside world. Chen Cheng had to create something truly priceless, something that would make everyone recognize its worth. After weighing his options, Wang Ping'an chose a pearl as the centerpiece of his auction. Pearls held weight in every major commercial hub on the planet, almost like currency. He held it up to the light, turning it slowly. The color was flawless. Not a trace of impurity. A closer look told him it was cut from a rare mineral, the vivid shade something you might never see in a lifetime, that he was genuinely impressed. The pearl was worth at least $3 million, not the $10 million he might have hoped for, but enough to buy a house outright. And since it was tied to shares in a publicly traded company, its real value ran even higher. Once he had the math straight, Wang Ping'an moved fast first. He leaked word that he'd bought the pearl and planned to auction it off. He wanted every power player on Island Coast to know, to stoke competition and make damn sure every tycoon in the region understood exactly who he was and what he was offering. Then he tapped a few investment moguls he had in his pocket, lining up backup bids. The moves left people stunned. They knew his bankroll, so why drop that kind of money on a single pearl? It didn't add up. Rumors started swirling. Something big was going down. Why else would a man like him sink a fortune into one piece of jewelry? Wang Ping'an didn't give them the real reason. He fed them a story, one that made the pearl sound like a once-in-a-lifetime treasure, impossible to find anywhere else. That line worked on the smaller fish. The big investors? No, those guys had spent decades in the financial trenches. They weren't buying a fairy tale. But Wang Ping'an had another angle. Make them believe in the pearl's value anyway. In the real world, something this rare was practically a myth. The tycoons heard the chatter and started paying attention. They told him they'd come to the auction. To men like them, the money was pocket change, but owning the world's finest treasure, that was real leverage, and a staggering profit. Wang Ping'an was grateful. Their willingness to show up was a massive favor in itself. The plan was locked. He threw himself into preparations. He decided to place the pearl front and center, in the most visible spot on the stage. Nobody would miss it, whether they cared about its origin or not. The auction went down in the Fujian building, Island Coast's most prestigious venue. That was where the top business magnates played. Everything in the building dripped with gold. Getting through the door meant you had serious money. When the tycoons heard the rumors about the pearl, they turned up for the show. Some came hoping to watch Wang Ping'an trip over his own hype. They wanted drama, wanted to see if the pearl was real or just hot air. The auction kicked off. Wang Ping'an had laid out a full spread, with the pearl displayed prominently on a pedestal. He'd gone all out on production, so many lots that the auctioneer had to march through them one at a time. Wang Ping'an sat in the audience, patient. It was a blue pearl. Under the lights, you could make out a red core pulsing inside it. Blood red. The auction house had a red pearl too, held back as the finale. Wang Ping'an's eyes gleamed as he watched his blue pearl on stage. Small as it was the first pearl he'd ever unearthed in that auction house. When he'd brought it in, it had caused a stir. A rare pearl worth a fortune. People couldn't stop staring now. Under the spotlight, faces around the room lit up with awe and envy. They knew exactly what it was worth. They couldn't believe he actually owned it. "Mr. Wang, that pearl is a genuine gem," one investor said, unable to hold back. "If it hits the auction block, I'd say $700 million easy." Wang Ping'an nodded with a thin smile. "Yes, it's valuable, but I didn't have a choice. Without this move, I'd have no shot at all." He said it loud enough for the whole room to hear. Heads nodded in approval. "Mr. Wang, you're too modest." Another investor stood and offered his hand. "You're a generous man. I respect that. More tycoons followed, lifting their glasses. To men like them, money was just numbers on a screen. What they traded in was respect, and men like Wang Ping'an commanded it. He smiled, raised his own glass, and drank with them. Since you're all so generous, I won't hold back. I intend to use this opportunity to climb even higher. Then we wish you success, another investor said. Wang Ping'an didn't waste another word. He drank, and they drank with him. Soon, the talk looped back to the auction, what was coming next, who would bid first, and how high the stakes were about to go.